process and the promise of African liberation is not complete. That is why when they say Africa Day, we say African Liberation Day. Africa Liberation Day. And both will work. The process of liberation is not complete with what they called independence. Last Wednesday, May 21, 2025, just a few days before this day, before today, Africa Liberation Day. And maybe if we hadn't taken liberation from Africa Day, being in the White House of black debasement might not have happened. Who knows? Many have unfollowed me on Facebook, unfollowed me on Twitter, unfollowed me on all the social media platforms because I said many years ago and continue to say in this space, the betrayal of South Africa is too much for us to even conceive. The betrayal of South Africa happened and has been happening for a very long time ago. 1990 was a betrayal. And betraying myself. And so because we are being told that there's a genocide against white people in South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa sat there, ambushed, hijacked, sabotaged, derided, debased, and stabbed in the back by his own people. Because he traveled with a delegation of high-profile white people, South African Afrikaans. He said, see, Massa, your house slave has come with the white people from my land. They can speak better than I do. They're richer than me. They're more respected in the world than anybody else. I have here with me, Massa, the richest man in South Africa. Rupert, you talk. And Rupert stabs him in the back. And he says, I have here with me a golfer. He plays golf like you, Massa. I am learning, Massa, because you told me to learn to play golf. Massa, I have been learning. So, Massa, I soon ready, sir. I soon ready, Massa. Golfer, sir. And you know him. Hole in one. And Mr. Golfer opens his mouth. And he stabs Ramaphosa. Technocracy is a new world order. This is what we're talking about. We witnessed that in real time. So what we saw was how the technocrat, Elon Musk, unleashed the politician, Donald Trump, on the global stage against a sovereign country, the White House. The White House being the global stage and the sovereign country being South Africa. So we saw that unleashing of the politician by the technocrat. And so this is connected to Starlink, and it's connected to technocracy, and it's connected to Israel. How dare you take Israel to the International Court of Justice and then to say Israel was committing genocide against the politicians. So Cyril Ramaphosa went to the White House for one reason, regardless of how you look at it, and that was to be punished by the white oligarchs. And punished he was. A public humiliation ritual is what he went through. So you say Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians. We say you are committing genocide against white people in South Africa. And you carry white people to speak for you. But when these white people they themselves being technocrats, opened their mouths, they stabbed you in the back in front of your face right there. This public humiliation ritual. And we're talking about African Liberation Day and Africa liberation. There's genocide all over the world. There's a genocide in the Congo. There is a genocide, and I'm talking about the DRC. There's a genocide in Palestine. There's a genocide that's happening on the outskirts in the Sahel, being carried out by Al-Qaeda in the Sahel. JNIM, J-N-I-M. Al-Qaeda in the Sahel. being carried out in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Niger. There is a genocide. There's a genocide in Sudan. And yet we're told there's a genocide in South Africa against white people. And Cyril Ramaphosa could not defend Africa or Africans because he was therefore, he became one of the wealthiest African, black African. He became one of the wealthiest African on the backs of the liberation of African people out of apartheid. What was supposed to be the liberation. It didn't happen because of people like Cyril Ramaphosa and Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu. Cyril Ramaphosa became a billionaire on the suffering of the black people of South Africa. It is what it is. He must be brought low and possibly even lower on this African Liberation Day. They wear black skins, but they're not of us. Let me take a groundbreaking legal challenge here on the island. A challenge which we've said before, and we're saying again, could redefine religious freedom and cultural sovereignty in Jamaica. At the heart of this challenge is a controversial Obia Act, which is a colonial-era law that has long criminalized African-derived spiritual practices under some of very vague and very discriminatory terms. And now, a very bold move, a very historical move here on the island. Professor Clinton Hutton has taken a legal action against the government of Jamaica, asserting that the Obia Act violates the constitutional rights of Jamaicans to freedom of religion, expression, and cultural identity. And we're going to be speaking with Clinton, hopefully next week, Sunday. The attorney on the case representing Professor Hutton is none other than attorney at law Bert Samuels. You know him very well. He's a leading voice in Caribbean jurisprudence. He is a stalwart defender of Pan-African rights and justice, and he's known for his clarity, he's known for his courage and his commitment to decolonization through the law. And this is what Bert Samuels is doing. He's back on the line to give us an update of where the case is now. Last time we spoke to Bert, this was filed, it was done, and then there were other things to be done. We're going to be getting this update from Pan-African attorney at law, Bert Samuels. Good morning, Mr. Bert Samuels, Pan-African attorney at law, sir.
Greetings to you and your listeners to the four corners of the earth.
Thank you so much for taking the time, Bert. Let me say, first of all, happy belated solar return. That just went a few days ago.
71 strong.
There you go. We're Taurians together. I'm the 11th and you.
Warriors.
There you go.
Tachi.
Chief Tachi. We are the children of Chief Tachi. So, in terms of the update, because last time we spoke, Bert, what had happened is that, okay, so this was this was filed, right? And the next thing that was due to be done was to hand or to send move the case another step, right? Which was to get this to the Attorney General.
That's right.
Right. So tell us where we are now.
As promised to you and your listeners, we filed. As promised, we were going to serve the Attorney General. We did so on Monday morning. And now we are waiting his response. We haven't gotten a date as yet. I did share with you a copy of a letter written to the Registrar of the Supreme Court that this is a matter of great national importance. And therefore, we're asking for an early date. We hope that the registrar will find that date. So the update is the Attorney General has been served, and further research has shown other things about other Caribbean territories which have taken it off their books, which makes a contradiction of, our own history so profound, that we are moving in one direction, other things are pulling in another direction. So I just wanted to say that there is a conference on revivalism on Wednesday of this week, which deals with African spirituality. because UNESCO has, recognized that the cultural heritage of mankind for revivalism, and that was in December of last year. So on the one hand, our culture is being put up and preserved at an international level and recognized by UNESCO. And among our own people here, there are some of us who feel that, to remove the Obia law would bring fire and brimstone on our people. So that's, the miseducation and the white supremacy theology is very strong down here.
Mm-hmm. All right, so a few things you have raised there, and I want to go through all of them. One, which first is to say, so a letter has also been sent to remind us who the letter was written to.
To the registrar of the Supreme Court, who sets dates for cases, that this is a matter of great public importance, and we want to go ahead of the line and get an early date. So I'm waiting on the response from the registrar. Several lawyers have seen me, several persons, and Anglican priests call me, welcoming the move, but some people have to be quiet. They can't put their heads out. And many people on the streets have seen me and say, you go. Clinton has been articulate about it. He has spoken publicly about the fact that he's taken this action. And we have a son of the soil who has written our history, being the claimant and being the expert that will testify before the court about, the suppression of our spirituality. When are you, and I know you're waiting on the response from the registrar, but when would you like to see this? Well, the court sits in terms, So we are now in the third week of May, fourth week rather. We're hoping that the term ends just the same time like school. So come the end of July, the term will end. We want it this term, right? We can't, demand it, but that's why I wrote that letter, and I hope that the registrar will give us the matter be heard in this term. So this term goes right up to the end of July. So within the next 2 months, I should hope we'll have the first hearing. At the first hearing, we will find out from the Attorney General whether he will oppose it or he will support it. And I'm hoping that he will support this because there's no alternative for any progressive mind, in my humble opinion.
Another thing you mentioned, of course, is that within the Caribbean, and this is what our listeners probably need to know in terms of how we contextualize this, that the act, this colonial law, which is the Obia Act, that it was not just in Jamaica. It was because this is how colonization and colonialism works. That it was across the Caribbean. This act that criminalized the way African people practice their spiritual traditions, and so it was also in other countries. But those other, quite a few of these other Caribbean countries have gone out way ahead of Jamaica, and have already repealed the act in those countries. Tell us about that, Bert.
Yeah, so I'll give you the list. The list is 5 countries. Anguilla did it in 1980, 45 years ago, 1980. Barbados did it in 1998. That's pretty long ago. That's 28 years ago. Trinidad did it in 2000, 25 years ago. St. Lucia did it in 2004, 21 years ago. Montserrat did it in 1983. And the British Virgin Islands did it in 1997. And part of the contradiction is that the British territories, because some of those territories are still British owned, because in Britain itself, it could not keep up a law like this. It had to cause its own territories to repeal those laws. So this is a contradiction where we have, the colonizers putting away some things whilst we are still wearing their old clothes down here and trying to maintain the old clothes laws. Explain that contradiction from his. I need help with that.
Inexplicable. And there's another consideration too, because while we have this other Caribbean countries that have done this for so long without any great fanfare.
Yeah, and no fire and brimstone.
And no fire and brimstone. Here we have in Jamaica, while there is so much support for the move that is being made by Professor Clinton Hutton and you as the attorney, and for those of us who support this and are deeply involved in the process, that we still have here in Jamaica, in a lot of spaces, this opposition to repealing this act. That is what and I'm wondering the extent to which part of this has to do with just ignorance of the context of this, and also that this has happened in other Caribbean countries, and what the outcomes were.
Yes. That is so, and you wonder why the resistance. And I tell you this, Clinton and I had a joke, a serious joke. He said, Bert, it's funny, the politicians are afraid of the demographics that will say, I'm not voting for you. So they are happy that the Pan-Africanists are doing the work for them. Yes, and we're proud to take on this great work, So the politicians, okay, you don't want people who don't believe in, that it should be repealed, not to vote for you. But we, the Pan-Africanists, think that we will deal with the truth and bring this, we are not politically influenced by any party politics.
Yes.
And that's part of what's destroying our country. So people have to be looking over their shoulders to do the right thing.
For those who didn't hear you last week and haven't been following this closely, remind of our listeners of the main areas the constitutionally that impacts on this case that you've brought against.
That's right. So remember, historically, after Taki's rebellion, they called Taki Obia man, and the first Obia law came the year after his uprising. So there's a context for Obia laws. The last Obia law was that we are now challenging is 1898. We went to court. We looked at several sections. It has 12 sections. We found 11 breaches of the Constitution and the rights. First is Section 17 of the Constitution, which gives the rights to religious practice. Then we have a right of association, because people who go to the Obia man, the clients of the Obia man, also can be sent to prison. Then we went to cruel and inhuman punishment, because the Obia man cannot get a fine. One of the few laws in which you are found guilty of and there is no fine. You have to go to prison. And then we have the instruments of Obia being criminalized. And we said, listen, the Catholic Church swings their vessels with smokes emitting from it, and they have the chalice from which they drink the blood of Christ. So there are a lot of instruments in other religious groups which are not criminalized, but the Obia man's instruments are criminalized. And there are several sections. If you publish anything supporting Obia, they say that publication makes you criminally liable. Yet we have Indians on television every Sunday in the night advertising their spirituality, their fortune telling, their reading of the palm. They are not punished. So we have that there's no equality before the law. And look at this, Kabu. 98% African Jamaican, and a minority can do something that we can't do. Isn't that horrible? It
is a reality of Jamaica. Bert, and I hear you chuckle at that, because I know you must have come up on this through the course of your life. You've been an advocate for justice for so long, using through the law, legal channels, that this is our own particular reality here on the island.
You know what struck me recently, Kabu? When they indoctrinated us during slavery and used the Bible to say that we were, we deserve slavery because we sinned and we are black and the black people are evil, then they said, they brought spirituality in it. They said, listen, there's a heaven up there. And if we just behave ourselves here and submit to slavery, one day we'll go to this great place called heaven, which is spirituality. That's their Christian spirituality, enslaving us with that. And when we want to preserve our sanity and practice our spirituality, they say it is illegal. Isn't that contradiction and, that hate coming out and using the Bible to spread hate? And some ministers have even preached against me. Someone heard a particular Christian pastor praying that there's lightning and brimstone is going to come upon me.
On you, Bert Samuels?
Yes, he said the lawyer who is challenging this.
We rebuke that. Hang on. We rebuke, hang on, because I'm talking now from the ancestors. We rebuke that and send it right back to him. Go ahead, Bert.
Yes, so he's bringing violence upon me. And, when you hear, I was on a talk show with some pastors, and at the end of it, you would think two things. One, that Obia is worse than slavery. And two, that a lot of the problems in Jamaica is Obia related. I said to him, he said, we're wrestling not against spirit, but flesh and blood, but spirit. I said, that's not the scripture. I said to him,
principalities and power and spiritual wickedness in high places.
Yes, thank you. And I said, but the flesh and blood that you're not going against. This is the gunman in Jamaica. You're not coming here to talk about gun violence. You're coming to talk about Obia violence. That's what you're targeting.
Well, I did an extensive investigative journalism research on Obia in the early 1990s, where I went to every single so-called Obia man in Jamaica, and I did an extensive program on that ran for almost a year. And what I found, the common theme and the common thread through all of that is that the people who visit or frequent the Obia men more than anybody else in Jamaica are people out of the charismatic churches, the Pentecostal churches, the Church of God, the Seventh Day, the charismatic churches, and then on the other hand, the private sector. So this is something that is weaponized, and they know they're weaponizing this, and this is why you have this outcry, because it is what it is, and we deal with the isness of things. It's going to be what it is going to be. Let us see how the law just pull the thread on this and opens it.
Yes,
I think it has to be. Yes, so that people can understand
with,
it.
People in Anguilla Radio called me about it because they've long thrown it out for 45 years.
Yes.
So I did an interview from Anguilla, and other Caribbean territories have been writing to me, attorneys, wanting to see, Guyana is about to do it too. It has not yet done it, but the debate is on. So it's a cane field will light, I often say to you, let's light the cane fields, man.
Well, that's that, and we have to do today's African Liberation Day, and when you talk about liberation, what does it really mean? What does it look like? We first have to liberate our minds from slavery and cognitive dissonance and ignorance, so that first thing to do is to open our minds to the fact that we have been traumatized as post-traumatic slavery disorder, that our history, our name, our ways of worship, our spirituality, everything that we brought with us from the continent of Africa, or that our ancestors knew, that was beaten out of us. Yeah,
but Kabu, there are people who don't know that before the white man came to Africa, our doctors were attending to us. Our doctors were attending to us. Our therapists were attending to us, and the Obia man is a therapist. So, we go on the western side and pay a therapist to go, to tell us our mental problems. We had to go through 400 years of slavery. We couldn't do that without therapists. We couldn't do that without therapists.
And this is why, for those who really, over time, and we have people like Professor Vereen Shepherd who has been saying this over and over and over, history must be compulsory in school, and we must teach history from our perspective, using the revisionist history if we have to, but the history from our people, history written by us through our own investigations, our own historians, that this must be compulsory. And the church has to get involved, because the church was, remember that the church was the most vocal against abolition. And once again, I say to our listeners, read all the books that you can. Professor Vereen Shepherd has written widely about this. Professor Hilary Beckles has written really seriously. Britain's Black Debt is a book to read to see the extent to which the church was against the abolition of slavery. So this is what it is. Bert, so what next? Is it a sit and wait, or wait and see, or is there something else proactive happening?
Well, an advocate, I'm going to be knocking on the door of the registrar for an early date. I'm going to go and see if I can, get the early date, because the next time we speak, I want to be able to tell you the matter, the wheel has started rolling. And interestingly, Clinton Hutton, the claimant, is a lecturer in revivalism on Wednesday of this week. I say, what a contradiction. And this is sponsored by the Ministry of Culture. So, this is a contradiction within our history. We want to lift up Bob Marley and say he's great. But when he was here, they call him the dirty Rasta boy from down a trench town. So every time they try to, make ugly what is good for our people. We are used to that, right?
Yes, we're used to that. We continue the fight. Thank you so much for the legal fight. The roads ahead, the legal steps ahead. We will keep in touch with you on that. And hopefully, Clinton don't know this yet, but hopefully he'll be in the space with us on Sunday.
Big up Professor Clinton.
Professor Clinton, we need you in the studio Sunday to come sit down, have a good talk, and then we'll open the phone lines and people ask questions. It would be great. And Bertie needs to come with him, come to think of it. 3 minutes to 7. Notice you don't answer me, remember. Let the records show that there was no answer given apart from a chuckle. All right, but so we talk next week. Definitely, I hope to have in the studio or on the phone line with us Professor Clinton Hutton next week, Sunday. Thank you so much, my brother.
Pick up Chadwick out in captive.
All right. Okay, you're inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running Africa, and thank you so much for joining us inside of the forum. It is, let me do this then, since we are just 2 minutes away from 7. The hour between 7 and 8 is brought to you courtesy of the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. That's the hour between 7 and 8 o'clock, brought to you courtesy of the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. South Africa ceremony that is underway at the South African Embassy. Our brother is there and is now speaking. And so we're just standing by to make that quick connection with Southall. And that is to look at the response in South Africa to the visit of Cyril Ramaphosa to the White House, how South Africans are responding to all that happened there, and also to look at the extent to which the technocrat Elon Musk has strong-handed and strong-armed the United States President Donald Trump into getting Starlink into South Africa and getting South Africa to commit to a large extent to breaking its own laws coming out of apartheid to protect and to preserve equality and justice, because there are laws to do with how you do business in South Africa that came on the back of the so-called dismantling of apartheid. And one of those laws, if you're going in as a business person to invest in South Africa, then 30% of that business or that investment has to be sold or given to, or I think sold, made available to the African people of South Africa. And that was to level the playing field economically. Now, this is what Elon Musk is against, because he wants Starlink into South Africa. And as a matter of fact, if you heard the point made by the richest man in South Africa, who was in the White House, in the Oval Office with Donald Trump, that's a fat one. He was called upon by Ramaphosa, to say there was no white genocide or there's no ongoing white genocide in South Africa. He did not. Remember, he did not say there is no genocide. As a matter of fact, he stabbed Cyril Ramaphosa in the back. Go back and listen to what he said very closely. If ever there was a Brutus moment, it was that moment. The 3 white men who were standing in the White House in the Oval Office. Et to Brutus, all of it, if ever there was a Caesar Brutus moment, it was that moment. When they all spoke, they stabbed him in the back. So he was there. And you would think he was there to defend South Africa and South Africans and to school Donald Trump and those who were gathered there, including Elon Musk. Listen to what Donald Trump said. He said, Elon is here. Elon is from South Africa. This is what Elon wanted. This is why I have said that we witnessed technocracy at work, where the technocrat unleashed the politician on the global stage against a sovereign country and won. This is technocracy. It's a new world order. So Elon Musk has been saying that on this Africa Liberation Day, that the anti-apartheid laws put in place by South Africa to protect black South Africans from apartheid-like economic sanctions and economic laws, that they are racist. Now, I have been saying in this space for many, many moons, from day one. I was at the stadium when Nelson Mandela came to Jamaica. I was on the field, part of the whole music thing and the whole other thing. I was there at the stadium. I came back from that space. From that day until this day, I have been saying this. Apartheid is dead, long live apartheid. Because it was very clear to me, because of how this process unfolded. And remember, Cyril Ramaphosa was right there in the negotiations. I interviewed him many, many times throughout that process. Cyril Ramaphosa. He was supposed to be one of those persons who would ensure that black people in South Africa were given equal rights and justice above all. Instead, he fed off the carcasses and picked the dead, stinking bones of Africans who were dying in the gutters. Enriched himself, and he's now a multi-billionaire. This is a reality. So Elon Musk is challenging South Africa. For that reason, he says the laws of South Africa are racist laws because they favor black people over white people. And I follow Elon Musk on the social media, and I saw him ramping this up over the last year and a half. He started out simple by saying the laws are wrong. Then the more boost he got from people around him, white supremacists and racist people, the more he started retweeting these things. And then he started saying that there's racism. And they moved from racist laws into genocide. We saw that happening in real time. That he's the first one, apart from those around him who is not as well known as him. But globally, he has a microphone. He has a bullhorn, which is X. And he used that, he weaponized that, the technology, against South Africa to say that there was white genocide in South Africa. That suited the Zionists. And it also suited the Zionists in the White House and the Zionists in Congress, the Zionists in the Senate. Israel has control over more senators than Donald Trump. This is what we have to understand and have to know, is that the Zionist state controls more senators and more operatives in government in the United States than the President of the United States. And this is where we are. So they took that. So on the one hand, we have Elon Musk weaponizing the technology against South Africa. So South Africa wants Starlink. Jamaica has said that I think Starlink is here already. So Starlink is also, and understand this when we talk about technocracy, Starlink is owned by Elon Musk and those who are behind him. And it makes sense to look at those who are behind Elon Musk. Elon Musk is closely related to the WEF. We don't want to get off tangent too much. But he was a youth awardee at the WEF. So too Peter Thiel. So when we look at those who went with Donald Trump to the Middle East recently, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, what's his name from OpenAI, ChatGPT and so on. All those technocrats were in the house. They went to Saudi Arabia, to Qatar, to wherever else in the Middle East that Donald Trump was just 2 weeks ago. He carried the technocrats with him, and they are the ones who came back with the solid partnerships with Saudi Arabia. It's a one world order. It's a new world order. And once you have something like Starlink covering the entire world, so the Middle East is accepting Starlink. The continent of Africa is accepting Starlink. The Caribbean is accepting Starlink. Where do you think this is going? A lot to say about all of this. And we're still standing by for thoughts, and I suppose he's still speaking at the U.S. Embassy the South African Embassy in South Africa. But we're still standing by, so I'm ad-libbing as I go along. But the point to make is that when Elon Musk started weaponizing X against South Africa to say that South Africa has racist laws in place that won't allow Starlink into South Africa, Julius Malema answered him immediately and said, "You know you're lying, Elon." I saw that back and forth between Julius Malema and Elon Musk. He said, "You know you're lying. What you're not saying to the people is that you do not want to obey the laws of South Africa." So is there any wonder that Julius Malema's campaign stadium chant of a song was played in the White House? Is there any wonder then that Donald Trump looked straight in the eyes of the coon, Cyril Ramaphosa, and asked him, "Why don't you get rid of that man?" Julius Malema and the EFF are all over social media from that time till this time. Mad. They're upset. They're angry. And there is a school of thought on the ground in South Africa and globally among Pan-Africanists like myself that Julius Malema, who was losing credibility and power in South Africa, was revived by this. So he has South Africans rising up. But also Zuma. Recall that in the video played by Donald Trump in the White House, in the Oval Office, also had Zuma speaking in Parliament about the need for black people to access land. There are laws on the book. The Constitution speaks to this. But Donald Trump is accusing Cyril Ramaphosa of appropriating land and then having the people do it, and then the people turning around and killing white South Africans. Cyril Ramaphosa could not deny that. But he had all the deniability in the world because it's not true. Why couldn't he say it's not true? Why couldn't he defend himself? Maybe because the people who he carried to defend him were weaponized against him. One of the things that I got from this whole thing, just looking at it, is that Cyril Ramaphosa is such a fool. And this is not naivety. This is just madness. Because why do you think these two people, you yourself say, here is your friend. He's the richest man in South Africa and I know you two are friends. Don't you know that these two spoke on the phone before you stepped foot into the Oval Office? That they already decided, that they knew that the video and audio would be played? That they knew that Donald Trump would come wasting paper with a whole ream of printed paper showing atrocities in Congo and saying that it is South Africa. Why is it that when Cyril Ramaphosa was shown the atrocities against Congolese people who were massacred, raped, massacred, and burnt, why is it that when he was showed that picture and that story of the burial of these people from the DRC, he did not recognize it as a DRC, but thought that it was South Africa? How could Donald Trump use images from massacres in the DRC to manipulate Cyril Ramaphosa? I tell you how. Because Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't understand African liberation or African unity. Speaking, he is at the Embassy in South Africa. My apologies there. Now, quickly to remind you that this hour between 7 and 8 is brought to you courtesy of the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. It is African Liberation Day, Africa Liberation Day on the island all day. In a little while, we'll be speaking with Malik Zulu Shabazz, who is National President of the Black Lawyers for Justice in the United States. He's also former National Chairman of the New Black Panther Party. Of comments on the issue of Cyril Ramaphosa and the White House. It goes really deep. We were saying before that the senators, the Zionist senators, the senators controlled by the Zionist Israel state and Mossad, that they were happy to jump on board what Elon Musk was saying and what Elon Musk was doing, which was really to say that there was a genocide in South Africa, even there was no genocide. And, you're going to have to change your laws and change your everything on the books, or else we can make it bad for you. Donald Trump said to Cyril Ramaphosa in the Oval Office, and I'm quoting, "I don't want you to look bad. I don't want to make you look bad." That was a threat. I don't want you to look bad. I don't want to make you look bad. That was a threat. You see? And at least Zelensky fought back. You remember that whole conversation? You remember that whole thing that happened with Zelensky in the White House? At least he fought back. Why couldn't South Africa fight back? Well, one of the big reasons why Cyril Ramaphosa couldn't fight back, and this is not to take up for him or to excuse his behavior, but it's because he was betrayed in the White House by the white people he brought from South Africa. So I know that there are lots of meetings in South Africa, that the EFF is energized and rejuvenated, and that people are pretty upset. But when you do not teach history, the history of apartheid, we have said that in this space many, many times. Every year, 9/11, they lay out a red carpet. They meet in Washington, D.C. and Manhattan and all around the world, if you're not careful, but definitely all across the United States and everywhere there is a United States embassy in the world. And they remind us that there was a terrorist attack on the United States, 9/11. And they read every single name of every person who died in those terrorist attacks. That's been happening from 9/11 to this day. Every single year, so no one forgets. So a child who was born after 9/11, and every child who's been born after 9/11 up to this point have been told about this and participate at various different levels, because it's in the schools, it's everywhere you go. But they're participating at various different levels in remembering the atrocity. This is what rituals are for, so that we do not forget. And so that in remembering, it doesn't happen again. This is why rituals are important. But they tell us that our rituals are sinful. They tell us that we can't have rituals because that goes against their policies. So South Africa doesn't teach apartheid in school. The young people in South Africa, did you hear what this white man from South Africa said in the White House, in the Oval Office? Did you see how the black people sitting in the couch was squirming? Because he went xenophobic against other African people. He talked about the borders. He talked about illegal migration. He talked about people coming across the borders. Who do you think he's talking about? He's talking about the people from Zimbabwe and Namibia and Malawi. He's talking about African people. That is how he weaponized the time and the space that was given to him. In 1990, we were told that the white man knows how to wait and how to plan and is patient, and that he will one day again rule South Africa. We were outraged because I was speaking to, at the time, Eileen Thomas Gifford, and we were linking with South Africa at the time. There were so many people we were talking to from South Africa, all the revolutionaries. And we were told at the time that there is a possibility, if Africa is not careful, if the ANC is not careful, if we do not see unity in South Africa, if there is not equality and justice for black South Africans, that black South Africans themselves will turn around and call for the return of the white man. That is happening in South Africa today. The vice president of South Africa is white. The man stood up in the White House and he said, I am from the DA, or whatever name the party is. And this is how we see things. So BRICS is under fire because South Africa is the S in BRICS. So this is not a light thing. Cyril Ramaphosa was put through a public humiliation for quite a few reasons, not one. BRICS. And that's why Trump mentioned Modi. And this is why Ramaphosa responded by saying, Trump says, he's my good friend, Modi. This is the I in BRICS, India. And Ramaphosa responded by saying, is our mutual friend. That is the S and the I. Starlink was one of the reasons why Ramaphosa went through that humiliation ritual. Elon Musk was there. Donald Trump said, Elon is here. Elon is from South Africa. This is what Elon wanted. Go back and listen. This is what Elon wanted. This is what Elon wanted. This is what Elon wanted. Israel was on the table because South Africa dared to carry Israel to the International Court of Justice. This is what Israel wanted. How dare you say that we're committing genocide? You are committing genocide. It's bullying. You know, the struggle continues. A luta continua, Vitora Iserta. This is important to know and to understand. That the South Africa fight is just about to begin. Cyril Ramaphosa is going to have to be moved out of place. The ANC will have to step back because the ANC is compromised. And I don't know if Unkonto Sise or the EFF, if they can find it within themselves to unite, because, brother, they're going to have to unite. And I'm not saying that I know all that much about South Africa's history, but I've been covering South Africa from, I heard the poem by Lorna Goodison when I was a child in high school, when she wrote a poem about Winnie Mandela and the bedspread. Cyril Ramaphosa went to the U.S. to beg. He said, the main reason, just listen to the beginning of that conference. He gave the introductory statement. He said the main reason why we're here is to talk about trade and investment. And Donald Trump was the second one to speak after the introduction, after Cyril Ramaphosa. And he said, we can talk about trade and investment another time, but we have other things to talk about today. And this is what Cyril Ramaphosa did not get. He didn't realize how serious it is or was until the white man who traveled with him, who he brought to the White House, because white people can defend you better than anybody else in the White House, until they stabbed him in the back. He didn't realize how serious it was until that time. He's come out of it, and he's saying it was a good meeting. The liberal media in the United States is saying it was a good meeting. I say to you, go and watch it again. This is African Liberation Day. Africa Liberation Day, however you call it, the liberation of Africa is incomplete and complete. It don't finish Our ancestors brought us to this place. And they're telling us that what they are giving to us is the best of what we should be looking at for ourselves. And we're saying to you, Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, the Sahel, and if you send Al-Qaeda or Jainim, we will Gaddafi it out, is our brother and friend, attorney at law, national president of Black Lawyers for Justice, former national chairman of the new Black Panther Party, Dr. Malik Zulu Shabazz. He's lectured and taught at colleges such as Georgetown University, Howard University, Carnegie Mellon University, University of London, Morehouse College, and many others. He was awarded the prestigious Young Lawyer of the Year award by the National Bar Association. Dr. Shabazz has an extensive track record in serving and operating programs for at-risk youths who have run afoul of the criminal justice system or may be abused and neglected. We are very happy to welcome Dr. Malik Zulu Shabazz to the space. My brother Malik, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on with you all. It's an honor.
It's good to talk to you again. It's been a while, but we are seeing the work, participating in the work, and loving the work. I want to jump right in because this is Africa Liberation Day. In most places, and the Africa Union has done this, they have taken liberation out of it, and now they're saying Africa Day. You're thinking on this, and do you subscribe to Africa Day, or do you think we should put liberation in?
Well, I don't think we should squabble over words. When we talk Africa, and when we say Africa, I think we're inherently talking about liberation. I'm for the word liberation, but either way, I don't think we should squabble over words in this great time of a Pan-African, really uprising, if you will, because we haven't had this much hope in Africa and her liberation since African Liberation Day started back around 1972 with the emergence of the alliance of Sahel states here, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, under the great leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso, President Goita in Mali, and President Tishani in Niger. This is a great time for Africa and African liberation.
And let's talk about that, because you say this gives us hope. I know that you have been having, because you've been writing about this publicly, meetings with representatives from Burkina Faso, especially that you plan to go into Burkina Faso, and that the people from, I think, the Black Panther movement who are already there. So talk to us about that hope within the context of our liberation struggle, Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, and the teachings of Kwame Ture.
Okay, well, yes, as a representative here of Black Lawyers for Justice and a current architect of the Black Panther movement, and it is true that right now in Burkina Faso, our great brother Ramzu Yunus, who is a part of our coalition, Ramzu Yunus of the Human Rights Policy Officers. It's true that our coalition is currently in Burkina Faso, and we're there because normally the storyline for African liberation is a glorious but a tragic storyline. When we're talking about Nkrumah, when we're talking about Lumumba, when we're talking about Stephen Biko, even talking about the Honorable His Excellency Robert Mugabe, we're talking about great attempts at liberation, but we're talking about many stories of tragedies, stories of coups and assassinations like of Honorable Excellency Thomas Sankara, talking about overthrows and attempts at liberation. And we're not normally talking about a continued optimism for that liberation actually being achieved. Okay, so now what we have is a young new face and faces and we have an alliance of 3 states, and also emergence of many African liberation or Pan-African forces across the continent. Mm-hmm. As we just recent Donald Trump's lashing and bashing of South African President Cyril Ramaphosa at the White House, but it also revealed that there is a liberation organization in South Africa called EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters, headed by Julius Malema, and even the President of the United States had to remark about how strong and impressive that movement is. So I think we all share. When you see the internet being swept and the public consciousness being swept with Africa, I mean, this is what we've asked for. We've asked for this environment, and we have a hope now that our continent and that and that its resources will be finally liberated, and that the poverty, the misery, the dysfunction and discontent can end, and that Africa really is, in the spirit of Marcus Garvey and El Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, that this African liberation is possible, and it's no longer a theory on paper. We are truly in a sea-changing moment.
Of course we are. And in terms of the sustainability within the context of what we already know, I hear the hope, and I want you to expand on that some more for us, because we know the challenges at the same time that our brothers in the Sahel, the entire Sahel, are facing, what with the president of Al-Qaeda and Jainim and so on, and the fact that even Burkina Faso is the current president, Ibrahim Traore, controls just a part of Burkina Faso. The other part of Burkina Faso and a lot of Niger and Mali are controlled by so-called terrorist organizations. Who are behind these organizations, and to what extent do they threaten this hope for liberation that we have and this process of liberation?
Yes, ma'am. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so we know that all 3 of our leaders in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, they face internal threats that threaten to topple this revolution. Mm-hmm. This revolution that has put the French military out of African states. This revolution that has cut neocolonialism off at the hands, and so there are forces that are going to try to overthrow that revolution, and some of them are sponsored by the West. But we cannot say that the West does not and would not sponsor terrorism. Okay, so what we do here is we look at the root of it. I guess in the West, we're looking at the poverty, the lack of education, and the needs of the people in these nations, so that we can support this liberation, support the revolution, and support this leadership that has come forth by working to end poverty, illiteracy, want, agricultural problems, and structural problems in these nations, so that the leadership will not be undercut by other forces that are trying to rally and manipulate the people to go against the leadership in the name of tribalism, to go against the leadership in the name of poverty and want. And so if it's to be concise, if it's whether it's the forces of I guess they say jihadism operating in certain parts of these nations, or whether it's the forces of poverty and want, if we as a black or African people who are listening on this line, if we will take our spirit of hope and optimism and translate it into real and tangible help for the people of these nations to improve their lives and standard of living, then jihadism is going to die, and all Western attempts to undercut and overthrow these great newly formed revolutionary governments will be sustained. And that's why we were at the Burkina Faso embassy this week, because we're organizing for the next level, and that's the stability of this liberation alliance of Sahel states.
Hold that thought. Let me take a quick break and come back to talk about that level of organization and how we can all be part of it.
Yes.
Safe, reliable, great value. Always buy from an authorized IGL dealer. The time by IGL is
now 7:45. You're inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running Africa, and my very special guest online, our brother attorney at law Malik Zulu Shabazz, National President of Black Lawyers for Justice and former national chairman of the New Black Panther Party. Malik, you talk about taking this to the next level, the next step. We hear President Ibrahim Traore say, you talk to me about democracy, but what kind of democracy if half of our people can't vote because they are being controlled by external powers through terrorism? And so that until we have a situation where we can all vote, then do not talk to me about this, an election. We don't get that question, for example, for Zelensky in Ukraine. And elections were due in Ukraine a few months ago. They haven't happened, but nobody asked, why aren't they having elections? What about the democracy? But we're getting this question for Burkina Faso. Now, talk to us then about that next level. Where do we go from here? You say there's a next step that you're leading part of the process.
Yes, and to address your first point briefly, it would seem to be unusual or an oxymoron for persons in the West or for us to support what is called a military dictatorships. Because we are supposed to be educated people who demand and require democracy or a representative form of government for us to support. Well, then how could all of us now be supporting what is called a military dictatorship? It is simply because the so-called democratic process has been manipulated by outside forces that has made democracy the tool of neocolonialism, that has made having an extreme amount of parties and interest group work work against the interests of the development and the liberation of these states. And so you would have outsiders financing and funding opposition groups against the real liberation forces in these nations simply because they have more money and influence. And so we have to go through this period right now of supporting, what could be considered non-democratic leadership, although it's really supported by the people, really shown that it's supported by the people. But right now we have to protect against the French intelligence and CIA and Mossad and all those others that just infiltrate the democratic system and overthrow and keep confusion going, and it never leads to liberation. So this is a necessary period right now. Now, in the next level, man, when we visit the Burkina Faso embassy on behalf of the organizations we represent here, and I also bring you greetings on behalf of the Afro-descendant nation, this key reparations group under the leadership of the Honorable Silas Mohammed here in America. Mm-hmm. Now, we speak to when we come to the embassy, they tell us about that is 4 out of 5 brothers and sisters in Burkina Faso lack formal education. When they tell us about the struggle of the farmers to have irrigation and tillers and generators and motorcycles and equipment for development. When they tell us about the lack of engineers and tell us about the lack of teachers and the lack of skilled personnel, that wakes us up, and that woke me up to let me know that our job in the West is to take our skills, to take our skills and our talent and to organize them now to serve Africa. Our job here is to take all of this goodwill, all of these social media posts, all of this excitement, and honestly translate it into some cash money that goes directly to buying and purchasing items that can support the people of Burkina Faso and the people of Mali and the people of Niger. And this is where we are right now. We're about what they call sustainable development. And we have to put our efforts and our labor and our money where our mouth is, and we can't just say hands off. Hands off the Sahel states. We have to now put hands on in the Sahel states, because if we're going to say out with the French and out with the British, then we have to say in with all of these talented Africans, many of who have wealth, influence, and skill. Now we have to put hands on and hands in Africa and reverse the brain drain, and we go to work for Africa. So that's where we are. Yeah, we have personnel there now. We have personnel that are scheduled to go, and I'm going, and we're in for the long term. We're buying a diplomatic mission. We're going to buy property there in the Burkina Faso, and we're setting up for the long term. We don't believe these men will be overthrown. These presidents will be overthrown, and now our work is to marshal the talents of Africans in the diaspora back to the east, and we can no longer here just say, well, we want a land and territory of our own. We're talking about Garvey and the Republic of New Africa. No, now we're at the point where we can clearly identify the land and territory of our own that's free from colonial control. And we have a working goal, because America's harsh. Donald Trump is harsh. But if we want to leave, we want a homeland we can go to. And that homeland is Africa, and it's starting to break out all over Africa. We have hope that if we want to leave and go back home, that we can go back home with our heads high and ready to work for our continued liberation. That's what we're working for.
And this is such a critical point to be made, considering that, of course, there's, and social media does work to some extent, but then you move it, what is the next level? How do we move the process of liberation from revolution to full liberation? How do we move that process along? What are you hearing from the diplomats you're talking to, the people on the ground that you're talking to, about the extent to which Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, the Sahel region, the AES, to the extent to which they're open for the kind of response that you've identified and calling us to action for and to?
Okay, I'm sorry. The last part of your question?
To what extent are these countries open and ready to accept us to come in for the kind of action that you have just laid out? How we move this to the next level? What can we do?
Oh, they're very open, and they're very clear. They're very clear about what they need. The diplomatic officials and representatives from Burkina Faso and Niger and Mali, they're very clear about what is needed on the ground in those states, because ultimately this is about the people. We're honoring the leadership, but we must understand the struggle and the conditions of the people. We must understand that these are nations that are often drought stricken for many parts of the year, and that this development is critical. And when we talk the general rhetoric about, quote, taking back our minerals and resources, we must understand that there are many challenges there with mining and manufacturing and with technology. Yes, they're very open. Yes, they want the help. Yes, they will accept the help. And yes, we must not limit our support to rhetorical support only. We must tell no lies and claim no easy victories. And we cannot shout down imperialism We cannot deal with imperialism by shouting slogans only. Yes, they want the help.
Yes.
But we are rolling. I want to know that and that the organizations that Attorney Shabazz is, and the organizations that I mentioned that I represent, and working with many other great groups, that we're dedicating. We understand that we're dedicating some years from now. We have some years of labor to go to support the development of these states. They want it. Mm-hmm. They want teachers from here to help. They want supplies. They want equipment. They need the skilled help. They want the engineers. They're students from Burkina Faso here in America that want to go to college, that need scholarships. There's a long list of needs that I am currently aware of from engaging with these officials, that I know for a fact that from my experience and my benefit from being in America that I can help. So I'm convinced that the next level is for all of us to turn this great energy and hope into concrete actions for sustainable development and for the support of the people, so that the people will say that my lives improved under the leadership of Goita and Traore and Tishani. That's our main goal, and then they have very nice and professional persons representing them, and this is the next level of work, and this is where you will see us consistently. So you won't just see me. I appreciate all of the sentiments. Yes, on July 4th, there's a worldwide Black Independence Day that is being supported by the Sahel states, that's being supported by the EFF and the other liberation groups in Africa, and it comes out of America. The July 4th Worldwide Black Independence Day. Yes, just like they're in the streets for African Liberation Day today, on July 4th weekend, everywhere they're going to be back in the streets. But we will be on the front political lines. We will going to be speaking up strongly. But we're going to have more than marches and mobilizations and speeches. We're going to have all of that so that we can convert that into nation building. Yes, we're going to contribute to nation building in the East, because that's where our hope is. Our hope is in Africa, and that goes against recent trends in America.
Yeah, this is brilliant, because we have always said after the march, what next? And I know these are questions that our brother Kwame Ture always also posed. And if we go back to look at him reflecting on the advocacy and the activism that our witnesses have always been, what after the march? How do we galvanize? And I hear you saying that we do that together. We put our skills at the forefront. We give funds if we've got that. But that there is something. It can't be just about talking and marching, although all of that is critical to get the process going. In 1963 and beyond, in the Organization of Africa Unity, we saw African leaders recognizing the need to move this process to another level. Hence the Organization of African Unity. In terms of the liberation process that we see underway on the continent of Africa now, what's your thinking on the extent to which African leaders now and other continental African countries have or haven't yet reached out to the Sahel? We see what's happening with ECOWAS, for example, because we're talking about liberation and the process of liberation. What's your own thinking on the response or lack of response, because, to what's going on, that liberation process that's going on in the Sahel?
It's clear that other African leaders and other organizations that claim to represent Africa are now under pressure to take a stronger stance for independence, unity, and liberation than they were. It is clear that the influence of these states and the rise of the support for President Ibrahim Traore has put pressure on every president in every other nation to make clear that their policies and their presidencies are for the people and not for themselves. In the past, according to our observation, these presidents and these countries under these alliances, they were not pressured, and they were not put in the corner about their over-dependence and subservience and even slavery to the West. They were not pinned. They were not pinned to the mat and forced to account for what they're doing in their offices. Many of these African leaders in the past, outside of the ones that have been martyred, they have been unchallenged puppets for the West. They've been unchallenged puppets for outside foreign influences, West and otherwise. But now today, that little brother and sister throughout the Congo, throughout Gabon, throughout Cameroon, throughout Uganda, throughout Tanzania, they're all rising up and saying, "Hey, why is it that I live in a nation that has tremendous amounts of gold under my feet, and why don't I have housing that's decent, health care that's decent, education that's decent? I'm demanding this, or I'm demanding a coup here also." And so these times are changing, man. This revolution is making the people of brothers and sisters of Africa, and with technology such as the internet, it is waking them up, and they are not going to stop. Mm-hmm. They are not going to stop. And they will topple every government in Africa unless that government moves towards a stronger liberation position, and they're making every president stand up and account for the resources and for what they're doing for the people, unless the people are saying we're going to support them being thrown out of office.
And are you seeing this kind of activity in any other countries that you're looking at? I know you mentioned South Africa a lot, especially with Julius Malema and what's happening there. I don't know what your thinking is on Zuma, who was former president, but now we have Nkosi Wazize, and he seems to be talking differently since leaving the ANC. But and then we have Namibia. But outside of that, do you see this wind of change, and to what extent do you see this wind of change blowing across, or this wind of liberation blowing across continental Africa?
There's no doubt about that the winds have changed. Every time I'm reading now, there's an African president standing up to declare some kind of policy that is near towards what the leadership of the Sahel states are doing. They're trying to mimic that policy. Now here, Donald Trump, the president of the United States of America. Now this man has helped us by standing up here and declaring so loudly, "Make America great again." He's causing an equal and opposite reaction where Africans are saying, "Well, make Africa great again." When he goes and says and lies with the blood of genocide dripping from his hands, from the financing of the Palestinian genocide at the hands of the Zionists, dripping on his hands, when he says that lies and says that there's genocide being created against white farmers and brings them to America and empowers Elon Musk, a white interloper into South Africa, what he's done is he's put the spotlight on Africa, and what he's done is help us to recognize that bring all of them here. That's what we say here. Bring them all out of South Africa. Bring all them farmers out of South Africa. Put them in some cow patch in America, and let real liberation forces who love Africa take control in Africa. And so, yes, the sentiment is rising. Yes, this idiot, Donald Trump, by playing that video of the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters leader, Brother Julius Malema, the former ANC youth leader, by playing the video of him and other revolutionaries in South Africa, he made a grave error, because what he did was expose Brother Julius and the power of the EFF to the world. And so as a man that has always worked with the PAC, myself, the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, I know how important it is for him to now have identified the real next government and the next coalitions that are to take place in South Africa. That's the revolution we want. South Africa and Zimbabwe and Namibia and those southern states which never really were freed, would never have been freed. Well now, bring all these Boers out of South Africa. Bring out South Africa and let the real revolutionaries, let EFF and PAC and the other liberation parties in South Africa set aside their differences and let them unite and let them take power in South Africa. And then we'll have that revolution that we've talked about from the Cape to Cairo taking place. So Donald Trump, as wicked as he is and disrespectful as he is, he's actually helping this struggle, and that lets you know that there's a higher power working on this scene when you see the devil working for God's plan.
In the same way we saw Langley uniting Africa in the way that we haven't seen Africa united in a long time, the African diaspora, with that testimony in front of Congress when he talked about Ibrahim Traore using the money from the gold to reserves to protect himself. That brought out people from every single African nation and from every single country within the African diaspora. I want to ask you something about that, but let me do this quickly and come back. This hour, or the hour between 7 and 8, was brought to you courtesy of the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. That's the hour between 7 and 8, brought to you courtesy of the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. Our very special guest online is Attorney at Law Malik Zulu Shabazz, National President of Black Lawyers for Justice, former National Chairman of the New Black Panther Party. In terms, Brother Malik, of that kind of unity that we saw recently in terms of, everybody. We were in Montego Bay Square. People were in Kingston, and that's two different flashpoints in Jamaica. And yet others were saying to us, where are you going? How do we? People were willing to go wherever people were to stand up against AFRICOM and the militarization of Africa and a threat to Ibrahim Traore and Burkina Faso. Earlier you talked about the next step. But let us look back a bit to say, have we, and when was the last time, in your recollection, have you seen that kind of coalescing of African people around a single global African issue?
We haven't. We have not seen Honorable Sister Queen Kabu. We have not witnessed this kind of coalescing and unity around an African issue since we rose up against apartheid in South Africa in the mid to late 80s and the early 1990s. We have not witnessed this level of interest, commitment, and concern in Africa since the end of the apartheid struggle. And to a limited extent, it seemed to be about independence, but it virtually turned out to be sort of a civil rights movement of gaining the right to vote, but the power never changed hands. So now this is the second wave, and technology and our ability to communicate is being advanced, by being able to understand and see each other. I mean, through social media and through the internet. And so when they put their foot now when Langley goes and lies, or even if he was telling the truth, when he brings attention to President Traore and he goes into Congress He can no longer do it in a closed room like Henry Kissinger and plot the death of our people, and they find out later through research. When he's starting those conspiratorial plans, he can be spotted right away through his testimony. Mm-hmm. And I say, so what if President Traore is using the gold for his security? Does not the President of the United States, Donald Trump, use United States Treasury funds for the Secret Service and his own security? Is not the funds of America used to secure the president and his apparatus? And is not the funds of every nation used to support their president? Of course the funds from Burkina Faso need to go for the security of the president. But is he a fool? and so what it is, ma'am, is that it's a new day, and we can spot the Langleys, and we can spot the brother who assassinated Thomas Sankara, Compaore. We can spot these plots now developing early and spot the lies early through the painful blood of our past experiences, and so this new politicization and this new willingness for Africans to say that they'll rise up in the streets of Africa, whether you threaten them with death or not. They've already experienced enough death. So history and time has prepared this generation for another level of support. Mm-hmm. And so simply our job in the West is to take it beyond the politics and take it beyond the good and the positive rhetoric, and translate it to sustainable development. You know, I'm here like I'm Pan-Africanist. Yeah, I'm known as a freedom fighter, a student of Dr. Khalid Mohammed, and associate of Louis Farrakhan. But I'm also connected in the mainstream in America. I'm also connected to very mainstream attorneys and civil rights organizations and other blacks of means and wealth. I'm telling you here, I want some brothers and sisters to contact me when I'm allowed to give out a number, because I don't want us to be in competition in the West. I'm talking about the whole Western Hemisphere. Mm-hmm. I want us to be in unity and not in competition about how we help Africa, mm-hmm. because I believe we're going to make a great contribution for Africa. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm foreseeing many millions of dollars being raised and going directly to help our brothers and sisters who are struggling in these nations. Mm-hmm. And I want us to come together to work like we have some sense to achieve these goals.
Mm-hmm. You know, our brother Wodemaya, I don't know if you saw his video, his YouTube documentary on leaving Ghana, flying Air Burkinabe, and going into Burkina Faso. And some of the scenes and the sights and the sounds coming out of Burkina Faso are really so motivating. He managed to interview persons who, through the direction of Ibrahim Traore, set up factories, tomato factories, because there's so many tomatoes in Burkina Faso. But when he went behind the financing of those factories, and was told that there is no foreign direct investment in this at all, but that the investors are all Burkinabes, that the people of Burkina Faso, through the direction and the leadership of their president, have invested in 3 factories and have already set up tomato processing plants. And then he spoke to another brother who is a Burkinabe, but who had gone and was living in Turkey, and said, but he's back now, and he's the one who is making and developing these the electrical vehicles in, I think that's what he, yeah, I could be conflating 2 things, but that we saw the production of electric vehicles ongoing. in Burkina Faso, and we saw the extent to which there is an emphasis on agriculture. You have been meeting, and as I said earlier, talking to persons, the diplomats, the persons on the ground, and also have people on the ground there in Burkina Faso. For those of us who are listening here on the island, what advice would you give to people who are thinking, and I hear this a lot, Brother Malik, people are getting ready to go to the Sahel. What advice would you give to them in terms of how you go and why you should go?
That's an excellent question. And I want to let your listeners know that I'm in Washington, D.C., which is a very strategic city because the embassy in America, all of the embassies are located here in Washington, D.C., as well as the centers of power of America are obviously right here in Washington, D.C. And so we appreciate brothers and sisters who want to go to Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. We appreciate them wanting to support and to go and to fact find. And what we want to do is we want you to go, but we want you to be able to make a contribution that will help. And we want to not just go. We don't want to just, I'm not saying anyone is going there just to gain clout. I won't say that. But we want to avoid that, I would say. We want to avoid just going to take us a selfie. Mm-hmm. We want to avoid, and I'm not saying anyone is doing that. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is that it's becoming clear that there are a number of groups here. I'm just one of them. There are many groups here that are formally working with the ambassadors, with the officials that represent these nations, mm-hmm. and that are formally working to help develop these nations. Mm-hmm. So if you go, I'm saying go. If you go, come with some money. Mm-hmm. Come with some funds so that them sisters and brothers who are working to invest in that tomato factory and struggling to keep our industries free of foreign domination. I mean, every nation has to have some foreign investment, but we don't want to be the tools of. We don't want to be the tools of foreign investment. If you're gonna go and you're not coordinating with any other groups, go right there to any one of those ministries of the government mm-hmm. that is in need of economic development and say, well, I'm here, I'm visiting. Mm-hmm. What can I do to help that tomato factory be better? What can I do to help pave that road that is needed, to help get some of these supplies mm-hmm. here? What can I do to help that car, that automobile plant? What can I do to help while I'm here? Mm-hmm. And if you can't find an organization to coordinate with, I believe that these governments here are not here to rob our people. Mm-hmm. I believe that they're not here to steal from our people. And go with your Bitcoin or your cash money or your checkout and directly support, if you're in the country, directly support that school or that institution or that plant that the government will tell you that we need help from, because they're going to buy that tiller, that farming equipment. They're going to buy that generator. They're going to buy that motorcycle. You will be surprised what a small amount of money can do to help a brother or sister over there who's struggling. So go there with your fist up. Mm-hmm. Go there and take that photo and let them know that you are all the way live in Burkina Faso and you on the front lines. Go there to fact find, but go there with some resources. Go there with some cash money. Go there with go there and say, I'm going to stay here because I'm an engineer and I'm no longer running off to France and America, but I'm an engineer and I'm going to give 6 months. I'm going to give a year to Africa. Go there with your body. Because that's the way we're going now with our bodies and we're going with our wallets and we're going with our lives. We're willing to give our lives that this is successful now. That's what we've lived. We've taught this all our life. Now we have to, as my teacher, Dr. Collins, said, we have to give our lives for liberation and salvation of our people.
Let's we're totally out of time, Brother Malik. Well said. Let me get from you now for persons who want to contact your organization, who listen and recognize that this is one of the areas and one of the channels in which they can assist. How do we contact you? Where do we contact you?
Yes, you can contact me, Attorney Malik Shabazz, the national president of Black Lawyers for Justice and one of the leaders of the Black Panther movement and a student of Dr. Khalid Muhammad. Contact me on WhatsApp. Hit me on WhatsApp at this number 202-336-9064. 202-336-9064. Contact me on WhatsApp if you really want to help and be part of a growing unity of Black or African organizations that are working for the liberation of Africa and to support the leadership of President Ibrahim Traore and the other leadership, Goita and Tashani, and to support Africa. Contact me. I'm in contact and help to represent perhaps 100 other organizations. Let us unite. My number again on WhatsApp, 202-336-9064.
All right. Thank you so much, my brother, Dr. Malik Zulu Shabazz, attorney at law, national president of the Black Lawyers for Justice as in the United States, and former national chairman of the new Black Panther Party. We'll see you in Jamaica soon, I know. I just
bless
feel
you.
that.
Happy African Liberation Day. I look forward to coming back seeing you, and thank you for all that you have done for us. And thank you to IRI FM is the greatest liberation show in the Western Hemisphere as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you so much, my brother. We'll talk soon. Dr. Malik.
Yes, ma'am. Black Power.
Black Power. Dr. Malik Zulu Shabazz. Words, as Malik Zulu Shabazz was saying just now, but also in action. We have been watching something very, very closely on the island. And on the 27th of April, if you recall, we had a very special guest, Dr. Vincent Adams, on air with us, taking us through a situation that was developing or is developing in Guyana that has ramifications for the Caribbean, the entire Caribbean Sea, the oceans, but also specifically for Jamaica. And we're talking about every other Caribbean island, right? But we focused then on Jamaica. There's been some developments since that. Dr. Adams told us at that time that the matter, obviously, let me just reiterate, this had to do with oil mining in the offshore in Guyana, but the unlikely or the very likely fact that there might be an oil spill, and if that happens on the high seas, what that would mean for the Caribbean country. He told us how Trinidad would be devastated, how Jamaica's coastline would be devastated, and other countries would be negatively impacted. And that initially there was a situation in Guyana where the former government had ensured that precautions were taken, that the law was used. And as a matter of fact, it's more than the law. I think there are ongoing conversations in terms of the Environment Impact Association assessment, and also the EPA. That whole involvement, recall. And that one of the things that came out of that was the new government had rolled back all of the precautions that were on the table. The matter was taken to court and the judge had ruled in the matter. Now we're hearing that there's another development. So I'm going to refresh your memories on this. This is very much in line with the kind of a liberation we're talking about, because when we talk about Africa, we talk about not just continental Africa, but diasporic Africa, and of course the Caribbean waters, as much as we talk about the the waters of the coast of Africa. Now, the oil spill bill is what is at the heart of the new developments. There are allegations of deceptive legislation. We have criticisms from legal experts, and there are concerns over the democratic processes involved. We want to start with some background on all of this. And we're going to go to my very special guest who is online. My next guest who is online is, and we're going to be talking again this morning with Dr. Vincent Adams, just so you know. But my very special guest online right now is an attorney at law and very well capable of talking to us about this situation because she's been involved in many different ways. She's an international lawyer, currently leading litigation against ExxonMobil's deep-water drilling offshore Guyana. She was awarded the Commonwealth Rule of Law Award for her work and was named Woman of the Year by the National Press. She's a strong advocate for justice and has drafted laws to protect the environment and secure the rights of Amerindian communities in Guyana. She has also lobbied for Guyana to give legal recognition to African ancestral lands. She used to work for the oil industry. She is a graduate of Oxford and London universities. Her name is Melinda Janke, and she joins me live from Guyana on the phone lines. Melinda Janke, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the Africa Forum this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on your program. It's a real honor, and good morning to your wonderful audience in Jamaica and wherever else they may be.
So we've been talking about this issue, and last time we spoke with Dr. Vincent Adams, of course, we talked about the legal ramifications, but also what kind of responsibilities would come out of a possible oil spill in the Caribbean, and who would be responsible. That's an ongoing conversation in Guyana. From a legal perspective, give us some background of the work that you have been doing in this matter.
So the law as it stands right now is that ExxonMobil Guyana's subsidiary is liable for all the costs of cleanup, restoration, compensation, if there is an oil spill. But of course, as the judge ruled in a case called Collins and White, which was the case that I brought with my team, the judge ruled that ExxonMobil Guyana did not have the money. And he said, therefore, they had to get a parent company guarantee. Now, this is something that Exxon had already agreed to. So this is the cost of doing business. And in fact, the judge said that they have to do this because this is part of doing business in Guyana. With the benefit of doing oil comes the burdens of the obligations. So they were ordered to produce a parent company guarantee, and the government has been appealing against that in the court. Mm-hmm. Now, if there isn't a parent company guarantee, what the judge says, in the absence of that, then if there is an oil spill, the consequences would be catastrophic. Catastrophic. And if you look at the maps produced by Exxon, you will see that the oil can reach Jamaica. Those maps are only for about 30 days. Mm-hmm. If you think back to the Macondo well blowout, that was more than 80 days. Mm-hmm. So the legal position at the moment is that the judge is that ExxonMobil Guyana is liable for the costs of everything. In a separate case, the Gaskin case, the Caribbean Court of Justice ruled that Exxon's co-venturers, Hess and the Chinese National Offshore Oil Corporation, are jointly and severally liable with Exxon. But these are the three subsidiaries, and that is why they are required by law to produce these parent company guarantees. Mm-hmm. Now, the government is opposing this and in the courts, and this is also what is behind the bill.
Mm-hmm. And the bill itself now, so we know that there's an opposition in the courts to this, but there's also another bill that has come up, and this is in Parliament.
So the current bill that is in Parliament is, in my view, unconstitutional. It is an attempt to roll back the environmental standards that Guyana has worked very hard to put in place. and you can't lower environmental standards. And I have written to the president pointing out to him that this bill is unconstitutional. Now, I don't think the president can assent to it. If he tries to assent to it, clearly that assent will be challenged. Clearly, any attempt if he assents and they try to bring that bill into law, any attempt to use that will be challenged in the courts. And I'm very confident that judges will say, look, you can't roll back environmental provisions. So I think the best course for the Guyana government right now and for President Ali is to shelve this bill, to say that they will look at the situation again, because what is really missing is actually the enforcement of existing rules and regulations. Now, at international law, Guyana is responsible. Guyana has an obligation to the neighboring Caribbean states not to pollute your environment, and that's an obligation under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Guyana is not meeting that obligation. Guyana is not carrying out its due diligence obligations to ensure that these operations are safe. And Dr. Adams will be able to speak much better about this than I can, but I can tell you that ExxonMobil Guyana has admitted in court that their gas compressor was faulty. I understand that they are operating above the safety limits of the environmental impact assessments. Now, these things simply should not be allowed.
Mm-hmm. And so that I want to go to the bill for a minute. How are we to understand the bill in terms of how it relates to the ruling of the court? Because I've noted that both yourself and Dr. Adams and other attorneys have said that the proposed bill is a strategic move by the current government to nullify the ruling by the court.
I think it is. There is no reason whatsoever to pass a bill that talks about financial assurance, which is basically what we mean by the unlimited parent company guarantees that are already in the permits. There's no reason to bring that in. We have a system that works. We have a system that makes it absolutely clear that ExxonMobil Guyana is liable for all the costs of cleanup. They have signed up to that. They have agreed to be liable with uncapped, unlimited costs. Why is the government now bringing in legislation to deal with this situation? What they ought to be doing is ensuring that there is no oil spill. Mm-hmm. They ought to be complying with their international law obligations to ensure that these operations do not harm the Caribbean and Caribbean economies and Caribbean livelihoods and Caribbean communities, because that is their obligation with international law. So they have transboundary liability.
So the Caribbean countries should be paying more attention to this. We spoke on April 27th with Dr. Vincent. I know that lots of Jamaica particularly, that we're not paying enough attention to this. What should Jamaica know as far as international laws are concerned, but also regarding Guyana's responsibility and what is unfolding in the parliament in Guyana? What should we be aware of?
I think that Jamaica, as a sovereign state with, amazing and beautiful resources, ought to be saying to Guyana, look, these operations are not safe. Therefore, you are in breach of your international obligations. You are not carrying out your due diligence obligations under international law. And we want to know that you will ensure that there is no oil spill, or that if there is, that it will be dealt with immediately. But this is, it's not really for me to say to the Jamaican government or any other Caribbean government what they ought to do. But I do think it's very important that sovereign states look at the danger to their economies, their communities, their people, and take a decision on how best to approach the Guyana government. I mean, let's face it, the BP Macondo well spill happened offshore the United States, which has more capacity and capability to deal with a spill than probably anybody else in the world. And it was a complete and utter disaster. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. If something happens with ExxonMobil's drilling offshore Guyana, Guyana has no capacity whatsoever to deal with an oil spill. And this bill makes it absolutely clear, this new oil oil pollution bill makes it absolutely clear that Guyana does not have that capacity, because they're now looking to put in place several different organizations that will be responsible.
Can you hold the line for me, please, Melinda Janke? Let me take a quick break and come back. To drilling offshore Guyana, Melinda Janke is on the phone lines. This, of course, is of critical importance to the Caribbean, especially against the background of the new developments in Guyana with this oil spill bill. The bill has been passed, Melinda?
The National Assembly, the government MPs in the National Assembly have passed the bill. They have a one-seat majority. The bill was first introduced into Parliament, I think, on the 25th of April and passed on the 16th of May. There has been no time, really, to review, to discuss. There's been no public consultation. It was rushed through. I understand that there wasn't even a clause-by-clause debate on the bill in Parliament. And of course, this is not the way to do legislation. This undermines the democratic process. It undermines the rule of law, because we expect that when a government puts a bill into Parliament in before the National Assembly, and I don't care which government it is, we expect the government to allow the opposition time to study it. And I don't care which opposition it is. I'm not linked to any political party, and I have no political party affiliation whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But there must be a respect for the democratic process. And on a matter as important as this, there should have been consultation with the people of Guyana. Mm-hmm. There are Amerindian communities who could be affected very badly if there is an oil spill that affects Guyana's coast, and there are maps which show that oil can affect Guyana's coast as well. They have not been consulted. They have had no say over this in this bill. So the process has a democratic deficit.
How likely is it that ExxonMobil or any other operator will be held financially accountable under this new framework if this happens, if a disaster occurs?
It's very difficult for me to say, because that depends on political will, but based on what we have seen so far, I think that it is very unlikely indeed. And the reason I say that is that the government, the Attorney General of Guyana, applied to join the Collins and White case, the parent company guarantee case. He applied to join it in the Court of Appeal in order to oppose the parent company guarantee, which is there to protect Guyana and to protect the people of Guyana and to protect the people of the Caribbean should oil affect you and your economies and your environment. Mm-hmm.
What's the next step? Because it's passed through the House. What's the next step? Because I hear the call to the president to say it's in your court now. So he has a final say on this to sign off on this, and then what if he doesn't? Or can he not sign off on it?
Oh, he can withhold his assent. All he has to do is send the bill back to the National Assembly and say to them that he is withholding his assent to the bill because it is unconstitutional, because it is an attempt to roll back environmental provisions and protections, because it will increase the danger to the Caribbean and will therefore have diplomatic repercussions, and because it will leave Guyana, if there is an oil spill, with a massive bill which Guyana cannot meet. In my letter to the president, I pointed out that based on Guyana's current oil revenue, it would take 35 years for Guyana to pay the potential costs of an oil spill. Mm-hmm. Now, this simply does not make sense, and therefore there are very strong grounds. Those obligations cannot be rolled back. You cannot lower environmental standards. Moreover, they have accepted those standards. If you look at the environmental permits, ExxonMobil has signed up to providing the parent company guarantees. They said, yes, they would do that. That is the cost of doing business. Mm-hmm. So if the president goes ahead and assents, and I don't think that he can do that legitimately, ExxonMobil will have to remain liable. Mm-hmm. They have agreed to these obligations. Those standards are in place. They can't be reduced. Mm-hmm. In terms of the Caribbean, I think it would be very important, though, for governments to consider what is the best way now to approach Guyana to ensure, one, that the safety of these operations is improved, that there is no more use of faulty equipment, there is no more operating above the limits set by the environmental impact assessments, so that the risk to the Caribbean is reduced, and that there is an understanding in place as to what will happen if, God forbid, there is a spill. Because at the moment, Guyana does not have anything in place to deal with the spill.
But Guyana does,
no boats, no nothing.
But Guyana does have obligations to its Caribbean neighbors, which this bill obviously is about to violate.
Absolutely. I mean, that is it in a nutshell. Guyana has obligations to its neighbors under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea not to pollute the environment of its neighbors and to take all measures consistent with the convention to prevent, reduce, and control pollution of the marine environment using the best practicable means at their disposal. So Guyana has a very strong obligation under international law, and they're not meeting that obligation.
And this is why it seems so strange to me that Caribbean governments at CARICOM isn't paying attention. What role can CARICOM play in this moment? Do regional agreements or principles give them standing to intervene, or at least to pressure Guyana diplomatically?
Oh, there is certainly scope to engage with Guyana diplomatically, and that would be a very good first step. I mean, I'm a lawyer, but I think that it's always better at the international level to try to deal with these things in a cordial, amicable, diplomatic way that respects the rights of all of the sovereign states involved. And another approach would be to go to the Caribbean Court of Justice for an advisory opinion.
Yes.
Now, we've seen the states going to the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea for an advisory opinion on pollution. That was in relation to climate change. And, of course, that was brought by Antigua and Barbuda. So this is and it was a very powerful move by a Caribbean country. So states do have options available to them, but they do need to move fast.
It seems to me as if this is something, they do need to move fast. I'm hearing that urgency. So it seems to me as if this is something that civil society could initiate.
I think it's possible for civil society to initiate, but I think it's really important also that the business sector wakes up to the potential loss to their businesses and the financial cost. There is a report from the Institute for Energy, Economics and Financial Analysis, the think tank in New York, which said that if there was a spill, it would affect economies worth over $100 billion US.
Wow.
That's the Caribbean economies. So while of course it's important for civil society to be involved, governments don't always pay attention, and therefore it's very important to see to have the business sector involved as well. Remember, this is about money. ExxonMobil is here to make money.
So that if this bill is passed. And we're talking about ExxonMobil now, but this could you tell me, if this could open the door to other extractive industries, which would ultimately weaken the environmental safeguards through this. What's the legal term for it? Legislative fiat.
So this bill relates specifically to oil production. Which is interesting because we already have a standard that ensures that there is unlimited and uncapped liability for the company that's carrying out the drilling, in this case ExxonMobil. It won't have any impact, in my view, on other industries, but it is indicative of a mindset that puts the that puts money above the environment. And this also is unconstitutional because the Constitution makes it absolutely clear that everybody has the right to environment that's not harmful to their health or well-being, and that the state has to take reasonable and other legislative measures to prevent pollution, to ensure conservation, and also to ensure sustainable development. And as you know, that means meeting the needs of present generations without compromising the needs of future generations to meet their needs. Now, there is no way that you can have an oil spill and not absolutely compromise the needs of future generations. So it is imperative to ensure that there is no oil spill, no harm to the Caribbean Sea, to the Atlantic Ocean, and therefore to the marine life and to the economies that depend on that. It's not just fishing, but also tourism, shipping, everything. We cannot live without the ocean.
And I hear you talk about the urgency of this matter. Finally, underscore how urgent this is for us, for the Caribbean, for Jamaica, for other Caribbean countries to deal with immediately. So in 2023, when we won this case, the Justice Sand Ilkison ordered an unlimited parent company guarantee. The judge in the Court of Appeal granted a stay on the 8th of June, just about 3 weeks later. And that stay was of the order to produce insurance and to produce the unlimited parent company guarantee. Now the appeal, so that stay was put in while Exxon appealed against the decision, and while the Environmental Protection Agency appealed against the decision enforcing their own permit that they had asked Exxon to sign and which Exxon signed. And that case has not been heard. And that very long delay is very troubling. But all the time that the operations are going on and there is no parent company guarantee in place, there is, as the judge has said, that risk of catastrophe. That if there is an oil spill and there is no parent company guarantee in place, who is actually going to pick up that bill? The condition of the stay was that ExxonMobil Guyana would provide a guarantee of $2 billion. Bear in mind that IEFA, the think tank in New York, said that economies worth $100 billion could be affected. $2 billion is disproportionate, and it is completely different to the unlimited, uncapped parent company guarantee. Now, we have filed several applications to get the case to be heard, to overturn the decision on the stay, to get copies of the guarantee, and so on. But this matter is taking a very long time, and every day the danger continues. Mm-hmm. I obviously am very much aware of the urgency of this. We have been raising it in this space. I've also written to the newspapers. The Observer published my letter, but there's no pickup on this, and I really want to thank you for coming in the space this morning and helping us to understand, adding your voice as someone who actually took this case to court in Guyana, and now we see a bill coming up in Parliament that is in essence just making the ruling of the judge almost null and void, if you will. Thank you so much, Melinda Janke. I hope that we can keep in touch with you on this, and that if there are other media houses that will, that are somehow interested in this, that we can pass on your number to them. I think this is something that journalism should get on immediately. Thank you so much, Melinda Janke.
Thank you very much.
All right. Melinda Janke, they're an international lawyer currently leading litigation against ExxonMobil's deep water drilling offshore Guyana. You know, it's very interesting because so Melinda Janke has been on this for a while. She is a lawyer who has put her time and her effort into this situation. There was a ruling from the courts, and now we're hearing an entirely different situation coming out of the Parliament in in Guyana. And so we're going to go now to the phone lines to energy expert and scientist former senior manager at the United States Department of Energy with over 30 years of service. This includes 10 years as a member of the Senior Executive Service Corps, heading offices in both headquarters and in the field. And he's Dr. Vincent Adams. He possesses over 40 years of experience in both the public and private sectors in environmental, petroleum, and geological engineering and geohydrology, as well as executive leadership and management. He's talked to us before. He was with us on April 27. He's back with us right now to continue the discussion that we just had with our sister Melinda Janke. Dr. Vincent Adams, welcome back to the Africa Forum. Thank you for coming in, for joining us.
Good morning, Sister Kabu. As always, nice to be back.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, you see, now I can't stop laughing. Thank you so much for that, Mother Vincent.
This feels as if I'm back home here. You know, it's becoming routine. It feels home.
Yes,
know?
I know. We can't wait for you to come into Jamaica, and we know you're coming.
Yes, I got to arrange. I know I owe you something. I got to look at my calendar over the summer so that we can plan something.
Almost definitely. So we just had a chat with Attorney at Law Melinda Janke, and so she underscored the urgency of this, but also help us to understand legally what the Caribbean should do. One of the things that's coming out of what she just said is the extent to which the business community, civil society of course, but definitely the business community, need to get on this immediately, and pointed us to the fact that this is something that can be carried to the Caribbean Court of Justice. So that's a whole other angle that we need to kind of flesh out as time goes on. Well, there's an urgency, I suppose, during this week. But I want to go back with you, Dr. Vincent, to kind of center it again and to remind our listeners of the process and where we are now in terms of what has happened in Parliament.
Well, what has happened here, and you know, just to recap a little bit to bring it into perspective as to what we're dealing with here, not only in Guyana, but as a matter of fact, I've said in our last session that the Caribbean is more vulnerable than Guyana. Mm-hmm. If there's an oil spill, it escapes Guyana for the most part and heads directly into the Caribbean. And it could wipe out the entire Caribbean. We call it the Trinidad just the one time. The one time 30, I think it was 30,000 barrels. You remember that ship that grounded up on Tobago? Yes. The chaos and everything it caused. We are dealing with many, many times over what the risk that caused. That was a one-time thing. Every single day, right now, every day you have a ship that passes through the Caribbean with almost one ship with 1 million barrels, over 30 times that 30,000 barrels every day. And when it doubles, when production doubles, there will be 1 to 2 ships every single day. So if the risk is high, on top of that, you got the risk of a blowout. If a well blows out, and then on top of that, they're dumping routinely every day. They're dumping produced toxic water, hot water with oil into the ocean, and on top of that, Exxon is being allowed to exceed the safe operating limit by 40%. The safe operating limit, the environmental impact assessment says they should be producing at a certain rate. They're producing 40% above it, which means that they're increasing the risk of an oil spill, while at the same time there is no insurance or assurance, financial assurance to cover it. So here's what happened. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that the previous government had put in, when I was at EPI, as a matter of fact, I wrote it into the permit, which means that it went into law. Yes. That if something happens, what Exxon did, which is what a lot of the major companies do, they insulate themselves from a liability. Exxon recognized that there is a high risk here. So what Exxon did? Exxon went and formed a limited liability company, which is ExxonMobil Guyana Limited that has no assets. They formed this company, and so Exxon name is not in any official document, the permits, the agreement, nothing. So this limited liability company now signs everything. They own the operations. They own all the liabilities. So what I did when I arrived, I said, no, I asked them, if we get a spill, who is going to pay for it? Well, of course, they didn't have anything they don't have any assets. So we forced them into having Exxon, the parent company, sign a guarantee and put it into the permit to say, if anything happens, you have whatever the subsidiary cannot cover, you have to cover everything over and above it. Mm-hmm. That's, by definition, is unlimited. There's no limit. It's impossible for you to put a limit on anything. That's what we put into law. That's what Exxon agreed to. What happened when the coalition government got out of office in 2020, this current government went and canceled that. And it caused a lawsuit with Melinda Janke was the lawyer. They won overwhelmingly. The judge said that the government was submissive and just, it really, and said it. As a matter of fact, what the judge said, that they were putting the nation at the risk of a calamitous disaster. Well, it's not the Guyana alone, it's the entire Caribbean. Mm-hmm. So guess what they did? They appealed the case that Melinda Janke won. They appealed that case. Exxon did. The government went and joined them. As a matter of fact, the government went all the way to the CCJ to get to be enjoined in that case to fight against its own people and, of course, fighting against the entire Caribbean people if something happens. So, guess what they did? They realized that this year, the elections are going to be coming up in a few months. And on top, this year is going to be on the ballot, obviously, mm-hmm. Because it's going to be a political issue. Mm-hmm. And they realized that they would not, as far as I'm concerned, would not stand a chance as they move up in the higher courts and even maybe at the CCJ. So guess what they did? Mm-hmm. They decided to take it through Parliament. So here you have, normally, in any democracy, you have the legislative branch that makes the laws. You have the executive branch that execute the laws, and then of course you have the judicial branch that if there is a dispute, they decide. And interpret the law. Well, that's exactly what happened when Judge Kissoon made the decision after you had a dispute between the executive branch and the legislative branch. Judge Kissoon on the judicial side made the determination that the unlimited liability must stay. So guess what the legislation did is to go now and overturn Judge Kissoon by this bill that they've created. And they didn't want to continue through court. Mm-hmm. So this here is an autocratic move on their part, is dictatorial. And
I hear Melinda Janke saying it's unconstitutional. So let me take a quick break and I'll come right back, Brother Vincent.
Okay.
Diverted gaze might be catastrophic, as we're hearing from the judge who ruled on this matter in Guyana. Expert and scientist, former senior manager at the United States Department of Energy with over 30 years of service, my brother, Dr. Vincent Adams. Brother Adams, you talk about the court case, and you also mentioned the sudden policy reversal just now in Parliament in Guyana because of the upcoming elections. But you've been writing about this also, and you've also said there are contradictory legal actions which undermines the credibility of the government, because you said despite proposing unlimited liability in the new bill, the government continues to appeal a high court ruling that mandates such liability from ExxonMobil.
Absolutely, and so they realize that they will not win in the court of law. So what they've done, they decided to circumvent the judicial process. Even though there is an appeal, they've appealed against this unlimited liability coverage that was ruled by the judge. That that Melinda Janke was the attorney that won that case against them. They appealed that. The government appealed it against its own people's interest. They joined with Exxon to do that. So now they realize that they will not win in court, so they decided to circumvent that decision by canceling it through Parliament. And as you rightly said, Melinda Janke feels that this is unconstitutional, but it doesn't matter to them. So that was what this bill is. As a matter of fact, in one of my missives that I said, it's an unrelenting assault on democracy by fiat of the party's authoritarianism way as to what they're doing, and they made it was transparent. Listen to what the Attorney General, who's the chief spokesman for the party in power, listen to what it is clear as to what their intent was. Here are his own words. He said, must we, meaning his party, must we allow decisions to remain on record that doesn't make sense in law? Mm-hmm. He says, must we be allowed to remain frustrated by an ill-informed decision by the court? He's telling the judge that he was ill-informed. He said, it would have been highly irresponsible to leave that decision on the public record. Then he goes on. He said, this unlimited liability coverage is a misnomer, and that is the problem with that ruling. And then he said, this decision distorts the law of the country. There's nothing clear. He retried the case in Parliament. There's nothing clearer than those words coming directly from the Attorney General that signifies that their only motive was to get rid of the ruling of the judge in Parliament. Mm-hmm. That's all. His words speaks for itself. Mm-hmm. Putting not only Guyana in as the judge says, calamitous at risk of a calamitous disaster. It is, again, I said, the Caribbean is even more vulnerable than Guyana if you get an oil spill because of the current where it goes.
And I'm looking at the ExxonMobil EIA, which I think this is a map, and I'm not quite sure if you sent it to us or it was Melinda, that shows Jamaica, where Jamaica is in all of this. And for Jamaica, it would be catastrophic. And this is their own. Yep. This is their own assessment. This is their own map.
Yep, absolutely. And here, the Caribbean, and that's why I say the Caribbean is much more vulnerable than that map that you're looking at. It shows what we call the plume, the direction where the oil goes. But imagine your fishing would be wiped out. The Caribbean depends a lot on tourism. Your beaches will be gone. So, and besides the other thing that you use the sea for, your ecological value will be gone. So that's exactly what we're dealing with here. So the Caribbean needs to pay attention even more than Guyana. As a matter of fact, you remember in the last time I was in your program, and I had started the process when I was at the EPA in Guyana, is to get the Caribbean countries involved in preparing that environment, in preparing that EIA. That is the Bible that determines the risk and how you need to mitigate the risk. By definition, the EIA is for responsible parties, and not for affected parties that will be impacted, and all those countries will be impacted. So you folks should get involved in preparing that EIA.
We're not paying attention. I can tell you this on the island. With the exception of this program, this discussion is not happening anywhere else. I thank the Jamaica Observer, for publishing my letter in April that I wrote to them, and you saw that short letter that I wrote. We're going to have to do more, I think, as journalists, as civil society, to raise this. But the Caribbean is not paying attention. But let me ask you, Dr. Adams, from an environmental engineering perspective, how realistic is it to manage the risk of something like a major oil spill without the kind of full liability coverage that Judge Kissoon mandated?
Anything it could be engineered. So here is what happened after the Macondo spill. The Macondo spill in the Gulf, it lasted for 8 to 9 days, and I think it was over 5 million barrels. And remember, it costed, by the way, it costed $145 billion US, $145 billion US. So here's one of the things in terms of management of the skills. And this here again, it shows the callousness of this current government. And put aside politics, one of the things that came out of that Macondo spill, it flowed for 8 to 9 days. So, we in the industry said we've got to have something that we can put on this well to stop it from flowing. Well, there's something that is called a capping stack that was invented. And all it is, it's like a lid, like a cork in a bottle. It's a big piece of metal, 50 to 100 tons heavy. So what you do, you bring it and you put it on top of the well and then, just stop it from flowing. So you would cut out that 8 to 9 days. So the objective then, it's obvious, is to get that piece of equipment to the site, to the well, on the ship as soon as possible, because you cannot keep it on the ship. It's too heavy. So when I was there myself and another gentleman who was at the Department of Energy in Guyana, we met with Exxon and directed Exxon to develop this capping stack. Well, and of course the objective was to get it to the ship as soon as possible. So we asked Exxon, we said, show us a plan to get it there as soon as possible. Exxon came back and said they could only do it in 20 days, and we told them that they've got to be out of their mind. So we set a target of 3 days to get it to the ship. They came back and said, well, right now we could only do 5 days coming out of the south of Trinidad, the southern tip of Trinidad. So we went ahead and accepted that temporarily. We put it into the permit, into the law to say, well, okay, for now it's 5 days, but you will have to show us a plan as to why you can't get it down to 3 days to get it to the site. Do you know what this current government did? When I left, you know what this government did? They went and tripled that time to 9 days. So here you are. They don't care. They said to bring it out again. Well, of course, what's happening there, their friends and families, they've got like these show bases. They bring it there so that they could make a heck of a lot of money to keep it there and maintain it. They tripled that time from 3 days when we brought it down to the minimum, tripled that time to 9 days. So now you've got, if something happens, you've got an extra 6 days of oil gushing in the Caribbean. So this is the kind, it shows you the mentality and the callousness of how we operate. And that's what these Caribbean countries ought to be taking note of in terms of who's managing. The Caribbean countries who will be most affected, they're not paying attention, like I told you before, Sister Kabu. I was part of a group that wrote Mia Motley and wrote CARICOM and wrote
Rowley.
the Rowley, and they have not even granted us the courtesy. And when I say us, these are it was a high-powered team of technical folks, PhDs, professors, mostly in the diaspora. They did not even grant us the courtesy of the response.
Why do you think this is so? Melinda Jenkins just said this is about, well, not in response to this particular question, but just generally speaking, that this is about money. She said this is the bottom.
It is about money. No question. No question. You remember I told you. You remember I told you about the greed. You remember I told you what the EIA says.
Yes.
The EIA, which is the Bible. You see, and the thing is, it's so sickening because where I work, and I like I said, I work for the U.S. government. And when we tell the Exxon's manager to jump, they ask us how high. They never ask questions. In Guyana, it's the reverse. Exxon tells this current government to jump, and they say how high. Now, the most egregious thing that is happening here is how they're breaking the law. How they're breaking the law. For example, the EIA, which is the law, says that the safe operating limit shall be 120,000 barrels per day in one operation, and you're operating at 165,000 barrels per day, which means you're putting everything at risk. And the equipment fails, you get a spill, and you don't have financial insurance to cover it. That is what it's about. Money. It's all about money. I just told you about the capping stock. They tripled the capping stock deployment time on the ship, which is very, very important, very critical. We were bringing it out to Trinidad, which is the only place you can get it there as fast as possible. They've tripled that to 9 days because they want to bring it to Guyana so that their friends, whoever own this shore base where it's stored, they can make a heck of a lot of money from Exxon, storing it in Guyana and using that facility. It is all about money. All about money, no question.
You know, I stand here listening to you, and I'm thinking, and I know it is, you know, a kind of naive way of thinking that Exxon itself should, I mean, from a corporate social responsibility perspective, but thinking that we can't leave this whole region that open without guarantees of, you know, without at least owning up to our responsibility. Exxon has been in this business forever. They know where there is offshore mining, that there are oil spills. The fact that this has been rolled back, that they agreed to it, and it has been rolled back, to me is phenomenal. Dr. Vincent, we're out of time, and I just want to give you a final word, just to speak specifically to the Caribbean government, to the government of Jamaica specifically, and then to the people of Jamaica about what we need.
Well, first of all, to continue what you touched on something there, and it's an assumption. It's a naive assumption that we all make. Well, this is Exxon; they should be responsible. Exxon is not a responsible company. They all over the world, Exxon has this problem. They have this problem. All that Exxon is interested in is to make money. And to be honest, I am not upset at Exxon. Exxon will do whatever they're allowed to do. Like I said before, when I was in Guyana, and my first rule, I brought the country manager in, and I said, my rule will be, you will have to abide with nothing less than what you have to abide with in the United States. And you know that I know the United States, how we operate. And they said, sure. And they did everything that I asked them for, except that when the government changed, it entirely switched. So Exxon is satisfying their shareholders. That's their mission in life, to make as much money as possible for their shareholders. But it's the government which is exactly what Judge Kissoon said. It's the laxity of the government, and it's about money and the corruption and those type of things. So don't let us believe that we are expecting Exxon to feel sorry for us. The only reason why Exxon is down there, Exxon has no interest, none, in our social well-being or whatever happens. And that is why they formed this limited liability company. They know that there will be a risk. And if something happens, they pack up and leave. They have no risk whatsoever. So, you know, I want to, in terms of speaking to the Jamaican government and to all of the Caribbean countries, like I said before, you are more vulnerable than Guyana. Guyana is making all of the money, which is, you know, I'm happy for that. However, you guys are taking most of the risk if something happens, and you have to get involved. From government to government, you have got to go to the Guyana government and say, hey, you know, I am at risk. You make all the money, we're happy for you, but you have to make sure that you protect us when it comes to risk. And that is, it's as simple as that. That is why that's what the essence of the letters that we sent to Mia Motley and Rowley and CARICOM.
And just finally, I know I said finally, but very last thing, just so our listeners understand how many barrels, how much oil we're talking about that is being mined and going through on the Caribbean waters on a daily basis.
Oh, yeah. Guyana right now is, and it's an incredible, this is one of the biggest oil finds in the last 50 years or so. I mean, it's massive. So Guyana, I don't even think that this has ever happened so fast in terms of production. We are producing right now 750,000 barrels per day. Within the next couple of years, it will go up to 1.5 million barrels per day. And as you produce the oil, of course, you got to ship it through the Caribbean. So as of today, if you look at those numbers, It's one ship, almost one ship, every single day that passes through the Caribbean with 1 million barrels per day. In about 2 years, I think by 2027, it's supposed to go up to 1.5 million barrels per day production. That would mean that you would have between 1 to 2 ships every single day passing through the Caribbean with 1 million barrels per day. And guess who operates these ships? It's a human being. And again, I like to go back to that 30,000 barrel spill in Trinidad, what chaos it caused. And I often, so that is why it's so important. The risk increases every single day. You've got 1 to 2 ships with 1 million barrels per day. Accidents happen all the time. Look, I just saw on the news here yesterday. I can't remember the country. I think it's in one of the countries in Europe, I think. But it showed where a ship just ran aground because the captain fell asleep. And it went right next to a guy's house on the water. It barely missed it by a few feet. So these are it's human beings you're dealing with. It could run on a reef, just like that ship in off Tobago. So these are the kinds of things. So I can't believe how the leaders in the Caribbean. I guess it's just because they're not knowledgeable enough, and that is why people like myself and Melinda Janke and others like yourself need to make them aware. Because I cannot believe that they would be aware of the risk and the danger of these type of things and not do anything. I cannot believe that. I refuse to believe that.
I do agree with that sentiment, and I think so the work we're doing is very important. I'm also going to appeal to my colleagues in the media in Jamaica to immediately begin to investigate this. You don't have to jump on the story. Investigate and determine whether or not it is a story worth covering. My brother, Dr. Vincent Adams, thank you so much for your time, for your concern, and for your passion on this. We will be matching it word for word in this space. And thank you so much once again for bringing this to our attention. Thank you, Dr. Vincent Adams, my brother, energy expert and scientist, former senior manager at the United States Department of Energy, over 30 years of service. Thank you, Dr. Adams.
Thank you, Sister Kabu, and I look forward to it again.
Of course, and shortly too. We're going to keep on this. We need to know what happens, right. what the president does in terms of the assent, because I know that there's a call for him not to sign off on this. And,
that's correct.
And so that. So we watch that, and I'm sure you'll keep me updated as to what happens.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right, you're inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African. This is an existential crisis, but we're not paying attention because, for whatever reason, our attentions are, we're distracted. So much happening, so much to think about and talk about. And we are very concerned with global issues, and rightly so. But right back home, here in the Caribbean waters, there's something brewing, and it requires our immediate attention. What if one of those ships with the millions of barrels of oil passing through the Caribbean Sea, that there is an accident? If you look at the EIA, if you look at the map, what that shows is that Jamaica is in serious problem. The threat to Jamaica is imminent. But there's also another side to that. Exxon, who is a parent company of the mining company in Guyana, they have no responsibility whatsoever. And this is the crisis. The shell company that they have put in place has no assets, so they couldn't take that up. And in the parliament, so the judge in Guyana, the court ruled that that the government has to go back to the drawing board and revert to what they did before under the leadership of Dr. Vincent Adams, was to say Exxon must put in guarantees. Now, the current government has rolled back those guarantees. Exxon is rolling with that. But in Parliament, and so the government of Guyana has appealed this decision by Judge Kissoon. The Parliament, that is against the people of Ghana, the Parliament has come up now with a bill which has passed in Parliament, which will make it illegal for Exxon to operate in Guyana. And the Parliament has come up now with a bill which has passed in Parliament, which will make it illegal for Exxon to operate in Guyana. And the Parliament has come up now with a bill which has passed in Parliament, which will make it illegal for Exxon to operate in Guyana. only now needs the president's assent. And if that happens, then this leaves everything wide open. If there is a spill in the Caribbean Sea, who is responsible? We take a quick break. Sister Joy, welcome. How are you doing, my sister?
Oh, greetings. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Oh, that's excellent. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I've heard about IRI FM all the time in the UK, and now I actually get to be on IRI FM with you.
Yes, and you walked in the studio, and I'm sure that I know you, but as you said, in the spirit, and of course, Sister Yama, you hearing me?
Yes, so you're hearing me?
And loud and clear. How you doing, my sis?
Giving thanks.
So happy to see you in the studio. Every once in a while we buck up at different places, but here you are in the studio. Good to have you.
Yeah, man.
No, so because we're almost out of time, so I'm just going to go. I know it's a big day for you today because you're just kind of using this day to relax a bit, but also to focus and to recenter on Africa liberation. And so we thank you for that, for both of you to come in. You said to me, Sister Yamin, today's African Liberation Day, and so I am here. So thank you for that. But Sister Joy, a little bit about yourself.
Well, not really quite sure what to say. I'm an activist.
Right, yes.
Have been for many years. A great believer in us as black people. We have something in the UK which will be global, called the Unity Line.
Right, we're looking at some of what you're putting out already in terms of even the unpublished work.
Yes.
Congratulations on that.
Yes, absolutely. And the Unity Line really is all the black people getting together, and everybody gives off their skills. When it was channeled to me, one of the first things that I was told was no money should exchange hands.
No money should
exchange hands.
So how does it work?
We are allowed to spend money on travel and food.
Okay.
So people come forward, giving off their talents, anything from creating an advert for the Unity Line to performing on the day. Mm-hmm. We also, last year, we got given a boat to use, and it's a big boat. You know, they have weddings and all sorts on there.
Right.
And it's owned by two Malawian twin brothers. And I'd been supporting them over the years, and so they said, as a reward for supporting them, we could use the boat.
Wow.
So
that's good news.
That's very good news. Yes. Unity Line is step one in all the things that are happening. Number one, we want a line of black people up and down the UK. One continuous line. That's step one. Step two is...
Have you started that?
Oh, yes.
And that's where I know you from.
Because I was going to say, in the past, I sent information to you.
Yes. There you go. Yes.
All right.
Okay, so everything is centered and connected now.
Okay.
Right. Okay, go ahead.
Excellent. Step two is what we're calling the Africa Fest. And the Africa Fest is a wholesale thank you to Mama Africa and all the things that she has given us. It'll be in the form of a 4-day festival, which will have all sorts of things, including indigenous talents. Just to say thank you. We've taken so much from Mother Africa, and we haven't really said thank you.
And this all across the UK, or specifically in London?
Well, the Unity Line is up and down the UK. The Africa Fest will be on the motherland itself. So we're starting with 4 countries.
Okay.
On the motherland.
Which 4?
It's Botswana, Tanzania.
You're in the right place.
Yes.
We're already loving the sound of that.
Yes. Botswana, Tanzania. What's next door? Kenya.
Malawi, because of the boat.
Malawi, that's right. But there is Zambia is coming on board as well. Zambia is coming on board. And
so what would that look like?
The Africa, it's a festival.
Okay.
It'll be a festival celebrating all the things that we've received from Mother Africa. From mathematics to architecture to athletics to astronomy, astrology, everything that we've received from Mother Africa. This is for us to say thank you. The other purpose of the Africa Fest is to let people on the motherland know that we are going to be doing a unity line, if you can imagine the map of Africa, and round the outside, just black people holding hands.
Wow.
So if you took away the map, you would have the map.
Yes,
with
I see that.
And then step 4 would be a line that circumvents the earth, that goes around the earth. So those are the 4 steps.
Right, and this is beautiful, brilliant. It's a and this is what visions should be like, because they should be that big and that beautiful, so that when you go after them, that the motivation remains. I'd like to be a part of that, especially holding hands around Africa.
Yes. Absolutely.
I didn't realize Sister Yamin had her drum. So that
she always has a drum.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
What I also wanted to say, because I loved your discussion earlier on. I was listening to your discussion earlier on about Ibrahim Traore.
With Malik Zulu Shabazz.
Yes, absolutely. I absolutely loved it.
Yes, thanks.
And that's one of the things that I really wanted to say to particularly people on the island. We have not been told how powerful our thoughts are. And we tend not to put any emphasis on it's just a thought. It's just a thought. Well, it's vibration. It's energy. This is how
first comes thought and then word and then action.
Exactly.
To bring that into action.
Exactly. So when people are asking, what can I do? What can I do? One of the things that we can all do is think in a certain way, because that sends out a particular vibration. That is what will bring things about. I mean, how do we know that it isn't our collective thoughts that's brought around Ibrahim Traore?
Because we create who we are just by thinking. My sister, I'm going to have to pick up with you. How long you staying?
I'm here until the 6th of June.
Well, I hope we can talk again before you go.
Okay.
Thank you. So how can we find you if people need to find you? I need a 2 minutes drum for... I got to ask me give it 2 minutes. Sister Yamin, how can we find you before Sister Yamin? How can we find you? Where can people reach you?
Well, I would say that you can get me through Sister Yamin at any point. Okay. At any point.
And Sister Yamin, how can we reach you? I mean, do you want to give out a number or an email? Okay.
876.
Yes, go ahead.
859.
876-859.
0779.
876-859-0779. That's for Sister Yamin. Okay. All right. And thank you so much, Sister Joy. And we'll talk to you again. This was just like an introduction, a very short one. Sister Yamin, give me a...
There is a meeting here right now. Come along, there is a meeting here right now. Come one and all and gather round. There is a meeting here right now. Our ancestor built the ark and gone. Our ancestor built the ark and gone. Our ancestor built the ark and gone. Another generation goes. Brother, we miss where art thou. Sister, miss where art thou. People miss where art thou. Another generation Then I'm going over to Africa. I say me get one word for Teloborio, oh. And you would answer saying, say me get one word for Teloborio, and I call you again. I say we get one word for Teloborio, oh. And you answer, say me get one word for Teloborio, Unity is the name. Unity the name. Oh, unity is the name.
Sister Yamin, I'm so sorry I have to cut you there. So, but let's begin a dance with we have to cut you right just so. Thank you so much, Sister Yamin. Thank you so much, Sister Joy. Really appreciate you coming in this morning.
Thank you for having us.
All right. I'm going to be turning it over. Thank you so much for listening to us on the 107s and for participating all morning. It's African Liberation Day. The Big A is in the house, ready to take you through the paces. You good, Big A? Well, howdy to you too. You know what, your Sister Yamin get a word for you. Sister, which word again for you, Sister Yamin?
No, first let's tell me what word she got for you.
I usually get a word for.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. Okay. Hold on, let me ask her. It's which word to get for Big A, Sister Yamin? You get a word for Big A? Or is she coming out? Hold on. Say that again. Which word? Unification. Unification. We're good. Yeah. Yes, we're good. We unificate.
We never had a disunification.
No, we never have a job. Right? We're very unificate.
We're very unificate.
Yeah, we're good over there. We're good. Thank you so much, Sister Yamin. So, Mr. Bigay, this is our...
Greetings, I'm Joy with an I.
Hi.
Okay. Joy with an... No, man. We cannot manage it on. Joy with an I. Bigay, just say you see your thing, though. Say that again, because teach him how to introduce himself, because him not know how to do it.
Hi, I'm Joy with an I.
Did you hear that, Bigay?
Jody.
Joy with an I.
Joy with an I.
And I always wear my eye.
Right.
Right, okay.
I like that.
Let's see them.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I had no choice because, but going it back, I had no choice. I had to kind of wheel on come again. We're live on air, All of this is on air. You see, this is just long time we don't see each other. And I'm Kabu with a K. Right. Sister Yamin, safe travel, my sister. Mr. Bigay, I saw that we got a whole lot of emails, a whole lot of letters, and a whole lot of pushback, but also a lot of agreement on some of the stuff that we've been discussing, especially regarding education. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that this might be the day to answer one or two, which is to say, we get all of your letters, all of your emails. Thank you so much. And we can agree to disagree on some, and then on the others we say, keep them coming.
Yeah, man. And some of them, I think you have, with due respect, you have missed the point altogether. The pushback is against something that we didn't even talk about.
True.
Because my issue is not necessarily about the exorbitant cost. It is about that too, but more so about what exactly you do with this massive amount of money that you collect. That is the explanation, and I think the parents at large, the school body at large, needs to know what is exactly happens to these funds. Mm-hmm. It is not just for the graduation exercise as you posture it, unless, of course, there is something way beyond our obvious examination of the details. Mm-hmm. I have been a promoter for years. I have put on many events. I know what the cost of various things are. Mm-hmm. And it is ridiculous, in my mind, the kind of monies that you collect versus what you offer. And I'm just saying... And
you were saying transparency. You're saying, well, let us know what you're doing with this.
Right.
Yeah. But we have a right to know, don't we?
We do.
So you're collecting it from us.
Of course. We have a right to know, and this is what I'm saying. It is not about whether or not the students pay, or whether or not the parents who have been negligent with their children's tuition certainly turn up with this money because they want to show off. That is not part of the conversation. That is not what I am saying.
The bottom line is that you're collecting the money.
Right.
And the fact that you're collecting the money means that, and you're collecting it from us, the parents, means that you owe us an obligation. You're obligated. You're obliged to tell us what you are doing with the money, where you're collecting. Because obviously that money is more, for the exercise you're collecting it for, it's much more than it's worth.
There you go.
So that's a point.
And even those who who claim that it is about the parents trying to show off at the end of the year, and they find money to do these things, but they won't find textbooks and that kind of thing. Let me be honest, and let us be honest about this. How much or who exactly are we speaking to? Are you saying that they are not hard-working parents who sacrifice each day to send their children to school?
And to buy the 101 textbook them on the book list when them not going to use?
What them not going to use? Are you saying that these parents who go to bed without dinner, right? Who I know...
Who sacrifice?
I know personally a parent who had to borrow her next door neighbor's dress to go to a graduation exercise. This happened several years ago, right? In order for that child to look good on graduation day. Are you saying to me that we're not talking about this set of people as well? Are we only talking about those who can afford to pay these ridiculous amounts of money?
It's also
to say that it is these parents find these monies when it is necessary. No,
we've been hearing this over the years, don't it? Because we used to hear back in the day that the parents can find money for buy blue wig and pink wig and yellow wig for go a dance and so on. But and over the years we've had people, and especially sad to say, educators, teachers are saying this a lot, and there are other people also saying it. But to me, that's a misnomer. Because, and it goes to the point you're making, Big A, what about the hard-working parents who are sacrificing so much? And they are the majority of parents.
And they are the majority. We are speaking to the minority when we posture an argument like that.
There's just so much to say regarding the system and even how education is set up right now, and I mean set up in more ways than one, to literally fleece parents. And that's also another angle that we talked about before, that there's a fleecing and a scamming of parents going on from many, many schools, and especially some of the private schools. But I suppose if you're sending a child to a private school, I suppose they expect that you have more money than you actually have. But, Big A, that's not true. Because there's another situation on the island, where there's some, and this is because the inequities are in education, where some schools get everything, and there's a whole different kind of, and I'm not sure if it's just past student association, but there's a whole different kind of attitude to that school as opposed to some of the other schools, especially the traditional secondary schools. That are now being, recently then become, in the last few years, high schools, but they still have the stigma.
Yes.
And so that parents make a choice. But that is also a sacrifice.
It is.
Because we know what happened in a lot of schools. I don't even want to go there because I don't want to be part of the problem, when we're talking about the stigma.
Right. We want to find solutions. And we have to address the problem in order to find it.
Yeah.
So we don't want to seem like we're provoking an issue or we're poking the fire without, making space for the solutions to these problems.
The bottom line is that education is equal in Jamaica. There are inequities in the system, and it's bad. It's bad. You just want to go to some country school, and some schools only get the children who coming from the similar kind of school, who have all different kinds of learning disabilities, and are not picked up by the system because there's nothing in place to identify those disabilities. And so they come out of primary school without being able to read or maths. And then they're sent into a high school that you already have the high school there in other category there.
Right.
So there is no, as I said, I don't want to be part of the problem, but this is what is happening in Jamaica with our high schools, where there's a classist, nearly a racist, but there's a classist system, more than the grade 1, grade 2 class, where there's classism, straight classism.
I agree.
I
do agree.
So when you experience both, you definitely know the difference, and this is part of our problem. But do you know the game? I'm going to leave it out. But do you know that there are thousands of students leaving high school at fifth form who still can't read at grade 2 level?
I know. I don't know if it's thousands, but I know.
Thousands.
You know, we have.
Because when they have 200 at graduation and take 5 schools, it's thousands. And by the way, we know if them find the students when they lost again in a COVID.
Tell me about that.
You know, remember, some of them can't find much. Remember, you know, because of COVID, a lot of students drop out of the system. They couldn't find them to give them tablet or find them to get them. So, me just I wonder what them if them find it.
If they have been, you know,
if they've been
resurfaced.
Found. I don't know. Anyway, so it's an ongoing situation. I don't want to just every day we come here, we talk about the education system. But you keep it going, so don't write me now, begin. And we'll talk about, we'll find another thing next week.
No,
right?
you know, as I said, you know, we appreciate the responses, but let them be relevant to the subject. All right, and listen good. Them say they feel like a trouble.
Listen good.
Right.
Listen good.
So, you know, to say things that we did not say. Yeah. Or to assume that we said something that we did not say is not part of the conversation. You know, we said what we said, and in response we would love you to.
And it's tough enough already.
Yeah, man, to respond exactly to what we said and not what we did.
Because honestly, I feel bad when I see somebody email. I say, but I know that we say. No, that we say. But anyway, no, but seriously though. Biggie, this is Jimmy Cliff. You know, Jimmy Cliff has been on my mind. When last I talked to him?
He has been?
Like I run through my mind.
What?
Uncle Jimmy, where you there? Link me. So anyway, we're leaving you now. Take care, walk, go tell them I don't know. Biggie is up next with his Sunday Sunshine.